One more round remains to decide a champion. All eyes pan to the one looking to run away with the crown, while 7 others try to chase in the shift to America's heartland. The virtual sun shines on Kansas, where tonight the KBueno Racing Network welcomes you to coverage of the first race in the round of 8 in the 2025 Droppin the Hammah Cup Series playoffs from the Kansas Speedway. And as always, glad that you're joining us on the KBueno Racing Network for another scintillating showdown, this time at our 5th mile-and-a-half race of the year. We're alongside Francisco Bacchiao in the booth. I am Kenneth Bueno, and Francisco, this is where the money is made. Only one more round separates these 8 drivers from a chance at a championship in the virtual homestead of Miami Speedway. Not often, at least not recently, have we seen mile-and-a-halves across the schedule, but here we are to kick off this round. Kansas Speedway, the stage for what could be a pivotal moment in those trying to punch that golden ticket into that finale.
Kenneth, you're right about that. This is a mile-and-a-half racetrack, and it's the only proper mile-and-a-half we'll have between now and the Homestead Miami Speedway to decide the championship race at the finale, because you look at the following races after tonight, and they include Talladega and Atlanta, but that is not the usual Echo Park Motor Speedway. It is the new Echo Park Speedway with the drafting style racing, as you get a look at the schedule there on the right side, and that's going to be very chaotic. It'll play very deeply into the style of this round, but what it means is that between now and Homestead, this is your last opportunity to get a proper feel for what you could expect to see on championship night.
Yep, and of course, this race will be very pivotal with those 2 super speedway races right after. You know, as we were digesting this schedule, we were getting a feel for what we were to expect come playoff time. We noted the fact that Atlanta was on the schedule right after Talladega. We kind of questioned ourselves whether it was the actual super speedway in Atlanta or whether it was the old surface that a lot of the drivers have come to love, but nonetheless, we are going to the virtual Echo Park Speedway. We will be super speedway racing in just a couple of weeks' time. So we go back to back to back until we end up with the 4 that bring us to championship finale, the virtual homestead of Miami Speedway. So should be a brand new challenge for a lot of the drivers as they try to survive what could be the melee over the course of these next 2 races. Well, let's try to refresh you as to what happened last week at the virtual Darlington Raceway. The Lady in Black played host to the final race in the round of 12. 8 drivers were getting through, 4 drivers eliminated, and this was early drama. Stephen Harlow taking the lead from his brother Ross at the drop of the green flag. Early mistakes, a lot of Darlington stripes, but Francisco, also a lot of Darlington close calls. There's Cedric Hunter sideways off turn 4. He would save it, and then it would create the battle for the lead at the end. Ross Harlow would stay in front. He'll grab another stage win in 2025. We'll lead us to lap 40, and it was a relatively clean race, Francisco. Lots of great racing. Harlow would command the field at the front, but then, of course, you always got to worry about Lawson Peel to the inside before contact in turn 2.
Eventually, the contact happened between those 2, sending the 16 around, and he would have a tough time recovering the track position all the way back up to the front of the field, but what it allowed the 23 of Zachary Hall to get up front, get the clean air, and then we saw trouble between him and Muscarella. This is not the only time throughout the race we saw Muscarella as a lapper play issue with the leaders.
Yep, it was a problem there for Zachary Hall, but he was able to get through. He ended up with his 2nd career stage victory. And then the final stage, green flag pit stops. Peel came in first. The undercut worked to perfection, and he holds off Zachary Hall and Cedric Hunter to capture his 9th race win of 2025. No one can stop Lawson Peel right now. It clinches his 4th race victory in a row, and of course, that will lead with a lot of momentum going into a racetrack like Kansas, which he definitely finds very favorable to his driving style. So Lawson continues to win. No one has been able to beat him yet, but that brings us to 8 drivers that'll challenge for the championship still, and our cut line right in the middle to decide those 4 that move on and those 4 that'll be sent home. Lawson Peel, of course, with the best advantage of them all, 16 bonus points. That's a boatload of points going into this semifinal round, and then it's all margin of error, very slim for a lot of the drivers second on back. Francisco, we've seen great races for both Steven Stempien and Ross Harlow. They've picked up so much points over the course of these playoffs. Now they've really got to scrap at it, and so does everyone else. It is 1 point separating 3rd all the way to 8th.
incredible tightness there between everybody. Really not named Lost and Peel going into this race right here, right now, because the way you look at it and knowing what races you have, Lost and Peel, he might have that advantage, but that's still not safe for him when you consider the 3 races. So really, everybody's just going to be battling each other for the effort of trying to make the most out of this race here tonight, because the next 2 are just going to be so unpredictable, and it's going to be so reliant on drafting and stage points specifically, that it's just going to be all up and down, and tonight could very well make or break how the round goes.
And with Talladega and Atlanta the following weeks, anything could go up there. Anything is left to chance. And so Kansas might be really the only chance to control your destiny if you want a championship. And with Lawson Peel's success as of late, probably not going to be surprised if we see him at the front again. But like we've seen at other mile-and-a-half race this season, we've seen surprises, whether it's Brandon Banks winning at Chicagoland, Cedric Hunter taking the win at Charlotte Motor Speedway to kickstart these 2025 playoffs. So all is left when the green flag drops and we get those drivers on the racetrack in just a couple of moments. Well, let's take you through the track map with our images provided to us by Google Earth for the virtual Kansas Speedway. Recently reinvented as part of the iRacing rebuild, got a bunch of graphical updates, but it is still the mile-and-a-half that a lot of drivers have come to know and love. Multi-groove racing is prevalent here in this track that opened back in 2001 with 17 to 20 degrees of banking in the corners, at 10 degrees on the front straightaway and only 5 on that back straightaway. But that progressive banking from bottom to top means several lanes viable here at this Kansas Speedway, and so we'll see drivers all over the racetrack in an attempt to find that level of sacred groove, sacred grip that'll get them a chance over the course of the long green flag run to move on through. And here's a look at an onboard lap, Francisco. This was taken before the build, so a lot of changes to this Kansas Speedway, but the track surface is relatively the same. What does it take to be fast around this place?
We're going to see a lot of drivers run around that outside here tonight. That's going to be still very much true with the new updates, as the outside lane is so much faster than the inside lane. Despite the inside being the better lane to save tires and try to conserve your stuff, the outside lane is just so much faster. You could go by a group of cars if they're stuck on the bottom, that we're just going to see everybody choose to go to that upper lane and just go around the outside wall here, shades of Kyle Larson and Tyler Reddick.
And this is the second lap, same situation here right at the very top of the racetrack. We will see drivers at the bottom, a lot of that to save the right front tire, but this seems to be the fastest groove. With the progressive banking, you really want to hang on that right rear tire and make it stick. So Francisco, you did a great job of putting these laps together. You get way up to the outside wall. I feel like I get a little close, but I've notoriously been terrible here at Kansas, so I'm not entirely sure where my luck stands there, but a fantastic lap to give us a look at what is it taking for the drivers to be fast at a place like this virtual Kansas Speedway. So in a couple of moments, we'll take the green flag. Drivers will be right behind the iRacing official pace car, and so we will get things started for our 5th mile-and-a-half race of the season, our final before Homestead Miami Speedway and that finale. So final seconds tick down in qualifying. Drivers will sit behind the iRacing official pace car, and that means it is our time to take you trackside and find out where all of the drivers and your favorite driver will line up for the 200 lapper here from virtual Kansas City, Kansas. We're on the pole. It is the number 45 of Cedric Hunter trying to ride the high from his last mile-and-a-half victory, the virtual Charlotte Motor Speedway, rather. He'll be first on the board with a 30.020, and his teammate Zachary Hall cut his teeth to get through this very round, and to enter the round of 8, he's going to try and maximize the points, maximize that momentum, and try to look for his first career victory from the outside of row 1. Back in row 2 is where you'll find the 11 car. That'll be Stephen Harlow in 3rd. Alex Muscarella eliminated from the championship contention after last week's race at Darlington, but he's still here looking for a victory. After all, the 48 car will start on the outside in P4. Back in P5 is where you'll find a fantastic qualifying effort for Sean Kalis. Will have his 90 car on the inside of row 3, and Steven Stepien jumping into this secondary point of the championship in this semi-final round in the round of 8. He will be just a couple of points away from that cut line, but he's won a bunch of stages so far this year. He's going to try and reap the rewards, get a bit more of that points, and jump into the championship with a bit more security. Ross Harlow, his teammate, rolls off in 7th. Timothy Stubblefield, the Daytona winner, will roll off on the outside in position number 8. Then back in row number 5 to complete the top 10. Back in 9th place is where you'll find Chris Progar, finally returning to the series. And Justin Hendry, his 85 car, starts in P10.
11th goes to the 31 of Daniel Holcroft, who we haven't seen for most of this season. He makes a return here tonight. Craig Parks will be rolling off from 12th, and Eric Schaefer will be in the 13th spot. And alongside him is going to be his teammate, championship contender Lawson Peel, not taking a lap time as usual. Brandon Banks, the other DBR driver in these playoffs, still is in the 15th spot with Brad Fulham in 16th. And rounding out our 17-car field for tonight is the 28 of Casey Knighton.
So much like last week's race at Darlington, same amount of drivers, 17, that we'll have here in this race. As the drivers roll behind the iRacing official pace car, there is something of note that is to be said going into tonight's event, and that is the reward given to the non-playoff drivers as a way to get more guys into the attendance list. As it has tapered off through this postseason, the owners are going to give a driver, the non-playoff driver who finishes the best, $25 out of their pockets. So a lot of the non-playoff drivers you see here tonight, of course, Kalis being one of them, Stubblefield, and many other guys not running for the championship. They'll be in it for the $25, and we'll have 2 races on our hands, one for that sacred golden ticket into the final round, and of course the $25 reward. So Cedric Hunter and Zachary Hall, the pair of teammates, will lead us off of turn 4, and for the 5th time this season, we're racing at a 1.5 miles. Green flag from Kansas.
And a good jump at the front of the field for the pair of teammates. They get single filed out. So does the 11 as Stephen Harley have to go a little bit ways back to find any side-by-side battles. And you can already see most of the field goes to the inside there, except for Alex Muscarella. He decides to use the upper lane there to try and get the momentum on the high side. And it's single file all throughout the top 6. Chris Progar was the first that was battling somebody. He's just behind the 16 of Ross Harlow. There's Timothy Stubblefield just behind him, battling Sean Kalis.
You watch those drivers third on back, Francisco, and you're watching the testing ground that is building up in these first few laps between Muscarella and several other guys in that back half of the top 10. And the middle line works perfectly for Zachary Hall. Powers on the outside, and our first lead change will occur just 2 laps in the books. Zachary Hall to the race lead back to turn 1.
And that was with just moving up 1 lane. Now here goes Muscarella charging up all the way to the outside wall. And look how much of a run he's able to get on the Fit 45 of Cedric Hunter. Clears him off of turn 2. Hunter finally able to get cleared for the position. And now he has to try and work away from third. Muscarella with a great move up to second there. And that's what we're going to see most of the night, is the difference between just a couple of lanes and what that can do. You see Harlow had a bit of a moment there in turn 3. Now Stempian goes all the way down. You could cut the inside of the racetrack here, no problem, and that could provide some potential 3-wide situations going into these corners.
The one thing that we saw in that KBueno onboard lap that you took us around this virtual Kansas Speedway is the use of that progressive banking, how impactful it is, and specifically in these short green flag runs, how very prominent it can be in battles for position, which you're watching right now. This one for 4th place, Stephen Harlow on the outside of his teammate, Steven Stempian. 2 drivers had sort of different races go down at Darlington. Harlow led the first bulk of the race before ending up in that slide in turns 3 and 4, sent him to the mid-pack, and Stempian, despite having a very fast car, nearly getting the lead at one point in the race, sort of tapered back even through the long green flag stretches, but solid switcheroo by Stempian. He'll get the outside nose into turns 3 and 4, and for now, Stempian will have 4th place. This battle between 3 teammates now, 4th, 5th, and 6th place. As Muscarella dives to the inside of Zachary Hall, didn't take long for the Lowe's Chevrolet to find his way down low. Muscarella to the lead.
And he's wasting no time getting up front. This is completely different than what his race at Darlington was like. And he immediately gets up to the top spot, but he has a moment there, gets loose, gets into the outside wall, and someone else goes spinning in the further back. It's Chris Progar.
That's Progar sideways off of turn 2. He's perpendicular to the racetrack, but he is underneath the racing line. So for right now, we will stay green. That Fastenal Chevrolet will deal with the damage. I'm not sure if there's suspension issues for the 7 car either, but regardless, we move. Battle for the lead again in turn 1. Planting to the inside is Hall. Firing on the outside is Muscarella. They'll remain door-to-door at the exit of turn 2. And the real question is, who will be coming to help from third on back? Will Cedric Hunter find a way to get to his teammate? So far, still door-to-door. Fantastic racing for the lead. Pinning down to the inside in turn 4.
And Muscarella's not really using all the way to the outside in these corners, which is definitely possible, but I think the tires are still new enough that he doesn't have to go all the way up there. You see, he stays about a lane off the very top, and look in 1 and 2 just how much more momentum he's able to carry through the center, but it's not really helping him on exit. He's probably trying to carry too much speed, and that's compromising his exit. That's allowing them to remain door to door continuously here. And as the run goes on, as we get more laps under the green flag on these tires, it'll just become that more difficult to make that inside work and make that inside pass possible. So as these two continue to be side by side, as long as the 48 isn't hurting his tires necessarily or more than normal, he should be able to hold on to this top spot, and eventually it'll work out for him.
That philosophy that we've seen here at Kansas is rip the top, you'll be the fastest, but if you are slow for a long enough time taking care of the right front tire, you may still have speed down at the bottom of the racetrack, just depending on how that long green flag run goes. For now, Muscarella's not ripping the boards yet, but he's remaining in the middle lane, trying to use that momentum to stay ahead of Zachary Hall to the inside in turn 1, but still no man beating the other clearly as they come back to the corner. Muscarella trying to pinch Hall as far down as possible, and that's reeling in everyone third on back. Cedric Hunter is now within a couple of tenths. Steven Stempian in fourth is bringing his way forward. Ross Harlow and a couple of others as well, still in the battle for the lead. Hall not giving up. Muscarella remaining on the high side. This fight's still going to remain door to door. I think Muscarella may have the edge to the start-finish line.
And there goes Stempian now to the outside of Cedric Hunter for the third place spot. Stempian has been learning with his teammates, the Harlow brothers, and they've been able to make that outside lane work. There's Stempian now going by for third. Muscarella up the racetrack. That allows the 23 to get clear. Here comes Stempian. What does he do to go to second?
He'll go to the inside. Remember, that is a teammate on the outside of the racetrack, so there could be some help dealing here between these two drivers. And this is sort of reminiscent of what we saw at Bristol several weeks ago as Stempian moves to the inside. Muscarella with a fantastic push off of turn 4, and again the battle for the lead reignites in the entry back to the first corner. Muscarella runs up high.
Oh, he's sideways.
Loose right in front of his teammate. He'll try to save it. He'll spin to the bottom of the apron, and he'll catch the race car just before it spins out of control. Locking it up will stay green, and Zachary Hall, for the second week in a row, sees a car spinning in front and surges forward to the lead.
And that might have been a byproduct of both the air packing a little bit from Steven Stempian, but also just if you keep running up there, you can get the car sideways. And you see, it was way too far for the 88 to really have any kind of aero impacts on the 48. You get the onboard look here. It just gets loose all on his own. Stempian has to check up to avoid getting into the back of the 48, and around he goes. Cedric Hunter lost out big time having to check up for that 48, but ultimately I think he just got loose all by himself, not aero pack due, as there's Craig Park slamming the outside wall.
Again, fastest way around this racetrack is the top, but you wear down that right rear tire enough, and this car is going to be out of control in a very big hurry. And so for Muscarella and Chris Progard, two cars that found similar situations right about here at the exit of turn 2, they both spin underneath the racing line, will stay green. We'll keep an eye on whether those two end up going a lap down as a result of our long green flag run that's stretching through 14 laps. How about the battle inside the top 7? That is Cedric Hunter, Eric Schaefer, of course, right in front, and then the man who's had the hot hand as of late, Lawson Peel. 4 race victories in a row, 9 total in 2025. And looking at that playoff picture entering this semifinal round, he's got 16 extra bonus points to his credit with those 4 race victories. So as he doesn't qualify for the upteenth time this season, he's still finding his way through the midst of the top 10. And think about the last 4 in which he's been able to find his way to victory lane late. His average start, 12.75, and that is paling in comparison as well to the overall average start that he's had over 2025 of 19th. So Lawson has clearly been the man to cut through the field, and his teammate is loose right in the front entering turn 1, catches it before it can get catastrophic, and there goes Lawson, free spot. He'll be in P6.
And once again, Cedric Hunter has a car get sideways in front of him in the corner. It's not been a good opening set of laps for the 45 of Cedric Hunter. He's down now to 8th after starting on the pole and trying his best. Now he's to the inside of Schaefer, possibly contact. Schaefer tries to take him out, but he ends up in the grass.
And a switch to the inside, near contact, and Schaefer drops not one, but several positions in the entryway back to turn 1. It has been a nightmare opening start for the Hampton, Virginia native. Here to the inside is Casey Knighton. That'll be the auction up for that last spot in the top 10. And while Schaefer's not running for the championship, he does have a season win this year. That came at the virtual Phoenix Raceway earlier on in the stint. And ever since, really hasn't found that momentum and get back to the top step of the podium. Holds off Casey Knighton for now, but that minimal contact is going to send that 3-car way back in the running order, as Cedric Hunter will stay up in 7th, and his teammate Zachary Hall continues to man the charge, but maybe not for long. Here comes Stempy, an inside look for the lead to turn 3.
He's going to have the inside lane here on the 23, and he gets clear. And now that boosts Steven Stempy up to the front of the field for the first time tonight. And I'm surprised we're seeing this inside lane work as much as it does. Maybe it is that much better on the rear tires rather than the fronts as in previous races here before the build. But we're seeing the inside at Kansas being a lot more predominant, a lot more effective. And this cooler track temperature, I'm not sure how much that has to do with it. But you see we're starting down in 93 degrees. That's rather cool. But we are getting later in the season. The temperatures and overall start to go down and really start to have an effect on these race cars. They go faster and faster and faster.
We are in the middle of summertime in real life, but in the sim, they like to mimic the entire NASCAR Cup Series calendar. So by the time you get to the season's end and when Homestead kicks in for that final round, it is going to be relatively cool as if we were running in mid-November, maybe early November at the earliest. So we'll see how that all affects with a 93-degree track temperature. But so far, inside line continues to be the best one. And Steven Stempy creates another lead change through our first 20. He'll lead for right now over 0.3 of a second now to Hall and his teammate Ross Harlow sitting back in 3rd place. When we look at the SK Sim Racing race analysis, and business as usual for these 1.5-mile tracks, 50 laps apiece for the first 2 stages. We'll go the next 100 in the final stage until the end. Remember, we went those 40 laps apiece in the first 2 stages last week at Darlington because that track is a bit different. It's about 1.366 miles, and then we went that way longer final stage that brought us the hefty green flag strategy calls, and of course what brought Lawson Peel to the 9th race victory of the year. But for Steven Stempy, he has been one of the most consistent drivers. If it's not Lawson Peel or if it's not Cedric Hunter, he's been the de facto stage champion. 8 career stage victories this season. That ended up with a ton of points into that round of 12, which he was able to advance through very swimmingly alongside his teammate Ross Harlow. And for right now, Stempy in control, very fast race car, and seemingly the one most in control over this early stint.
Still have a ways to go in this opening stage, as this is going to be a long one. Here's the look back at the incident from earlier between Schaefer and Hunter. After Schaefer had gotten loose in turn 2, 45 of Hunter goes down to the inside. A little bit of tight, but it looks like possibly some netcode contact, and then with the help of those white gloves, you can see that 3-car made a turn to the left towards that 45.
He was not happy with Cedric Hunter at all. We've seen a lot of the animosity with Eric Schaefer with some other drivers in the field and lots of contact. He's a very physical driver, but right there, of course, not very pleased with what Cedric Hunter had done there at the exit of turn 4 as they were fighting hard for position, and Schaefer was still in the middle of kind of grappling his race car to get it back under control. Remember, he was holding on to that final spot in the top 10. Now he's bled off more time and more track position. Daniel Holdcroft, the car right in front, that Mountain Dew and Doritos Chevrolet. First time we see Holdcroft in a little while here in this Droppin the Hammah Cup Series, trying to be that highest finishing non-playoff driver to end up with the $25 at race end. And so far, Holdcroft doing a solid job of keeping his car clean. We've seen him in some of the earlier races of 2025, but through the mid-season stretch, didn't really encounter Holdcroft's name all that often. Very happy, though, that he's back in the series as we move forward halfway into stage number 1. And we talk about non-playoff drivers trying to make their names known. How about Justin Hendry, who had finished just a couple of spots short of the race victory when we kicked off the year at the virtual Daytona International Speedway, has had phenomenal super speedway events. He's led laps, he's ran up front, and right here, a top 5 building up for Hendry. He's currently the man in charge of the $25 should the race end right now, and a solid start for the 85.
Great start for Justin Hendry, who had an opportunity to win the opening race of the season at Daytona, but got caught up in the incident with Kip Easley off of turn 4. And right now, sitting in the 4th spot, just in front of Stephen Harlow, but behind Ross Harlow, so he's in a Harlow sandwich as we speak. But right now, still looking pretty good for the 85 in the early days of it. Lawson Peel lurking a little bit further back. He's driven his way up into the 6th place position, and he's slowly but surely starting to creep his way through this top 10 and eyes a spot in the top 5 as Harlow now is putting pressure on the 85, but he gets into the outside wall on corner entry, and we'll see that probably a good bit throughout the night. Is you'll get cars that get into the outside wall, and here, and what I consider here in Darlington are the 2 tracks that are most difficult to get off the wall once you get in it.
And there's the onboard look, our Charlie Byer photography onboard camera with Stephen Harlow, and right in the background is where Lawson Peel is, just trying to challenge this 11 car in the entry back to turn 1. And for Stephen Harlow, again, we mentioned those early laps led at Darlington played into his favor until that mistake entering turns 3 and 4, but with a solid race right now, he could very well point his way forward. Again, those 2 races, though, after Talladega and Echo Park Speedway, not going to be the kindest, and for Stephen Harlow, really hasn't stood out as much as we've seen other drivers do at the Super Speedway style races this year. And now here comes Lawson, fight to the bottom shelf, auction up now for 5th place, back to turn 1.
And they're going by lap car Chris Progar who was involved in that incident on the back straightaway, spun out, no caution. He now just goes a lap down in 16th spot, as Timothy Stubblefield had at some point in the last couple laps towed it. He's out of this race. And now, slowly but surely, but Zachary Hall is not letting Steven Stempien to continue pulling away. He has actually closed the gap back up to the race leader, and we could have a battle for the top spot here, as there's 3 wide with Progar, the lap car. There's it. That's going on the left side of the screen. On the right side of the screen is the battle for the lead.
And Stempien had really charged up on Zachary Hall's rear bumper, made it a proper fight that was easily decided after about 5 seconds. And now Zachary Hall trying to get that favor back and get back to the inside, lead a couple of more laps, and what would be another stage victory for Hall, and what will be the 2nd straight race in which Hall could win a stage if he's able to make it happen. He's got the nose down low on the drop in the Hammah Chevrolet, so battle for the lead again. Restarts here, back to turn 1. Hall has been faithful to the inside. It's worked to help his right front tire. Stempien fights back from the progressive banking, and it's Muscarella Hall all over again, this time with a different driver.
And what I've noticed is that, especially after these updates, as there's a little bit of a dive by the 23, gets into Stempien, gets the 88 loose. What I've noticed, and that Stempien sideways in front of the field, there's contact.
And will they save it? No, they're both wrecking to the outside wall. They'll catch Ross Harlow, and that is 3 playoff drivers involved in a hefty crash with 18 laps to go in stage 1.
The top 3 all get involved as Ross Harlow tried to avoid it to the outside, had nowhere to go, and that is 3 huge names that are immediately taken in the first incident.
And there's Stempien's reaction. I'm not sure of their suspension damage. I believe he got away scot-free. But with Zachary Hall right behind him, I believe, Francisco, there must have been aero packing involved in that situation, because all 3 of those drivers found themselves in trouble because Stempien had gotten loose right in front. And there's hefty damage on the front end of Hall's freaky fast Toyota Camry. That may be a nightmare to deal with for the rest of the race.
I think the 16 of Harlow might have the worst damage of it. He went pretty hard with the right front tire. He possibly has suspension damage, so he'll probably have some terminal damage to have to deal with there. 23, Zachary Hall, he might have some engine and aero damage, but I don't think there's any big suspension damage on that. Let's take a second and unwind and take a second look at this and just see exactly how it happened. We saw the contact in turn 3. I don't think that necessarily affected the actual outcome, but you can certainly look at this, and that's what allowed Hall to keep up better in the corner, both of them on the bottom. And then right about here, Stempien is sideways from that air, and then just tries to save it. The 23's trying to stay off of him, but they end up going to the same part of the racetrack, and that's what leads to the contact. The 16 spins trying to avoid both of them into the outside wall, and that is immediately how the top 3 all get involved in an incident.
And here's Ross Harlow's perspective, that car 3rd in this line of cars, and there's his teammate sideways, and it just unravels from him trying to get away, and the rear tires kick up a little bit. Harlow ends up hard in the outside wall, and one of the drivers who's been very consistent as of late in these Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series playoffs now will be out of the race, 16th on the racetrack, as this car awaits damage repair, and that's heavy suspension issues for the 16, and his teammate Steven Stempien will also be at the tail end of pit road.
We have some split strategies here. Not everybody brought it down the pit lane here. With the top 6 have stayed out on the racetrack on their current set of tires. I think Brad Fulham has just brought it down pit road, so he's making it the top 5. So Lawson Peel, Stephen Harlow, Cedric Hunter, Casey Knighton, and Alex Muscarella, all 5 of them have stayed out under this caution flag. They're going to attempt to get to the end of the stage without utilizing a vital tire set here, but the first one on tires is going to be non-playoff driver Justin Hendry, who assumed the race lead after that incident. He'll be the first on 4 tires. Then Brandon Banks, playoff driver Brandon Banks. So this could be a huge opportunity for Brandon Banks to try and make up some big points and possibly get a stage win.
Yeah, Banks for right now is the only driver to hit pit road with this strategy call. Obviously, Stempien and Hall are down there for damage repair, but if we're talking just pure strategy, that paulscars.com Chevrolet hanging in there, that 3rd car on the inside, now 4th car on the inside lane as we'll get to the green flag. So a dramatic situation off turn 4 leaves us with this green flag restart with about 16 laps to go in the opening stage here from Kansas Speedway. Lawson will inherit the race lead. Stephen Harlow, who was fighting for him with position inside the top 5, will be on the outside to react in row 1. Cedric Hunter, Casey Knighton, and a pair of Toyotas inside and outside of the 2nd row, 3rd and 4th place. First green flag restart of the night after our first yellow involving 3 playoff drivers. Green flag. And a solid jump by Peel brings in Cedric Hunter to the inside for 2nd. Stephen Harlow having to play defense. Tap of the outside wall down the back straightaway. And Brandon Banks hanging in the background. That first car on the fresh Goodyear Eagles to pit as most recently is that late yellow. Now to the inside, Hunter down low trying to make it work. Harlow fights back again up top. And the fight for 2nd will let Lawson Peel separate by 2 or more car lengths.
And that was not a good restart for Justin Henry, who's fallen all the way back outside the top 10. Maybe he didn't take tires on that pit stop, but it was a 14-second stop as they're stacking up behind Daniel Holdcroft as there was 3 wide. Look at the mess off of turn 2 on the top of your screen as there's Cedric Hunter still trying to battle away for 2nd. There's Schaefer and the 28 of Knighton battling for what is P7 on the racetrack.
And Schaefer spent 51 seconds, almost a full minute down pit road trying to repair what was damaged at the right front of that race car. Or the left front of the race car after that damage alongside Cedric Hunter, but all things remain okay on the fresh tires now cutting through the field as Hunter finds his way back down again for that 2nd place spot. And they're going to bring more drivers. Brandon Banks, Steven Stempien in it, 3 wide down the back straightaway with Banks in the middle.
And now Stempien is into 3rd, now behind Cedric Hunter, puts the air on Hunter. Look at Hunter getting loose a similar way we saw these two a little bit earlier. And Banks now to the bottom, 3 wide for 2nd.
Down to the apron is Banks trying to push forward down the bottom alley, and here comes Stephen Harlow. 4 playoff drivers in the brace back to turn 1, and Eric Schaefer trying to punch his nose in it. Now to the outside, Stempien will make it work. Harlow fights back down the inside, and Cedric Hunter will remain side by side again with the Project Hopner Chevrolet. This time it'll be for 4th, and Brandon Banks, what an absolutely phenomenal restart, and the winner from Chicagoland steps into the runner-up spot off turn 4.
It's not going to be easy, though. He can catch up to Lawson, but it's going to be Steven Stempien that's going to give him fits here all the way through the next 12.
Remember, Banks was the last driver to cut right into this semifinal round, had just enough points to squeeze past Justin Erb, Alex Muscarella, Richard Swabley, and several others to get into this round of 8, and now he wants more. Down to the bottom of his teammate, and clear decision for Peel to step back. Brandon Banks to the race lead with 10 laps to go in the stage.
A great move by Banks as there's now Stempien to the inside of Peel. The tires just doing a lot of work for these two as they're able to clear easily of that 9 car who goes all the way up to the outside wall. Now has nothing else he can do as far as that battle's concerned. Brad Fulham is currently exiting the pit lane, but he's no factor in this battle. Muscarella looked like he was way down off on the racetrack, possibly loose off of turn 2. See some front end damage there on the 48 as he gets it going back in the proper direction now with Daniel Holdcroft to his outside. And we're having a big mess of attrition already in this opening stage, Kenneth. Only 13 on the lead lap.
We saw Stubblefield with early issues. Sean Kalis is out of this race despite a great qualifying effort to put him inside the top 5. Kalis in that SK Sim Racing Chevrolet will see this race go past him now, 8 laps down and counting. Brad Fulham is a car to get the wave around by our next yellow, should we get it at that stage break at lap 50, but he's 3 laps down, so it'll take a couple more yellows for the 19 and the Canadian to be back on a level playing field. And then, of course, Ross Harlow, the big storyline of it all, involved in that 3-car action off turn 4 alongside Stempion and the 23 of Zachary Hall. So with all of that, Ross Harlow will have to try and recuperate all of the lost points at the 2 super speedway races to close off the round. Again, we mentioned just how wild this semifinal round would be because of the back-to-back super speedway races. And when it was confirmed that Echo Park Speedway would host the semifinal race of the year, it left a lot of the drivers to think Kansas, that one race to decide where you'll be with at least more control of what could happen and what you could do in the battle to get that advancement into the final round at Homestead. And now Harlow will have to trust in his super speedway instincts at both Dega and Atlanta to try and push forward into the final round. That is going to be a very big ask.
Yeah, with this competition, with this field, Kenneth, you knew you just could not afford a DNF. We might have smaller fields now, but you can expect your entire competition to be in the top 5 or 10 every single time out in the stages, in the end of the race. The best are remaining. So with this huge setback for the 16 of Harlow, you just have to think must win for him in the next 2 races. It's just going to be so difficult to overcome the points advantage unless everybody faces problems, but that is a very low, realistically low chances of that happening, and you can't depend on it either. If you're Ross Harlow, you have to go out there and just try to win every stage or even win the race. As the 28 or the 85 of Justin Hendry gets tapped sideways by Lawson Peel in the trial. Peel was trying to draft with the 85, gave him a mislocated bump, and that got the 85 sideways. What a save by Hendry.
And the Mobile, Alabama native able to recalibrate the race car, get it corralled before any trouble insisted there off of turn 4 to the apron. And now in the fight for 7th place with Stephen Harlow. Again, Hendry was one of those drivers to come down pit road on the fresh set of Goodyear Eagles, but hasn't been able to cut through the field as easily as Stempion and Brandon Banks, but still remains in position for some stage points. And right now, the non-playoff driver, highest in the running order for the $25, it's going to be Eric Schaefer, eliminated earlier on in the postseason, running in that 3rd spot with the fresh tires. And Craig Parks as well, eliminated from the last round, the round of 12 at the virtual Darlington Raceway. Very clean tied Chevrolet. Great to see Craig Parks in the top 5 now.
Great stuff for the 17 here, as there's a look at the incident. Lawson Peel was running the outside with the 85 of Hendry running the inside. There's Hendry getting clear. Peel goes down, tries to give him a tap right about here, but stays on the right side and gets the 85 sideways. Good save there by Hendry as he is able to keep it going in the right direction, and no real incident came out of that.
And thankfully, Hendry was able to gather it up by the apron. It's a very dangerous place to be very slow, and that trajectory that comes right up the banking, you can get right into that oncoming traffic. So a wonderful job by Hendry to stay out of harm's way and still somewhat in this fight for position up to P5. So Hendry is going to use that fresh tire power to reignite this fight for what's going to be that top 5 position. A couple more points in the battle for what will be some extra playoff or point standings gains versus other non-playoff competitors. And Cedric Hunter, Lawson Peel, the 1-2 finish at the virtual Darlington Raceway just last week. And Hunter, other than Lawson, has been one of the most consistent drivers as we'll step into the last 2 laps of stage 1 with Brandon Banks in control.
And it's about half a second, the gap between 1st and 2nd. Stempion, you see there, trying to see if he can use that outside lane to gain any momentum, but it looks like Banks has his number right now with the final 2.5 miles around this Kansas Speedway to complete a wild opening stage of this race. Cedric Hunter now gets past Lawson Peel. Justin Hendry gets past Peel again, so Peel drops down to 7th, but remember, he is on those older tires, probably waiting to use a tire set here at this stage, and compared to most of the different drivers that took this alternative strategy to get the track position, and it's going to work out for Brandon Banks to capture a stage win here, which will help him and his playoff hopes.
It'll just be his 2nd career stage victory this season. Remember, Banks had won the race to lock into these playoffs at the Chicagoland Speedway, held off the field that was very, very contentious in that overtime restart. Banks was able to sustain the pressure and then captured 2 top 10s in the round of 12, but that Bristol race had been the huge dagger. 16th after what had occurred with Craig Parks right in front. I believe caution is out, but we did see a car that may have been sideways there in the middle of the trioval. Stage will come down to the end, and Brandon Banks will win his second career stage of 2025. So Banks will pick up the iRacing official pace car. We'll recheck and see if anything happened there. I believe I saw a car spinning through the grass as they were coming down to that stage finish. But Casey Knighton will pick up the final spot available at 1 point. And for all of those other playoff drivers, Zachary Hall, Stephen Harlow, Lawson Peel, Cedric Hunter, and then Stempian and, of course, the stage winner, Brandon Banks, will pick up points. So although we had that huge crash involving Stempian and Hall at the exit of Turn 4 to bring out our only on-track yellow of the race, they have been able to recuperate and get back in control of their race cars and fix all of that damage. The biggest concern was for Hall, apart from Ross Harlow, who had been out of the race, but because of that nose damage, it could be a death sentence with the next-gen car. That radiator, that air intake gets very much damaged, and the engine could be without a lot of performance. Field will come down pit road this time by Brandon Banks in control, and with the group of drivers that are pitting for the first time tonight, it'll be a big question mark to see where they end up as Eric Schaefer's in the grass.
And we'll see how these first proper set of pit stops go here for the entirety of the field. We had pit stops on that stage end, but of course that wasn't the whole entire field. And it's going to be and you saw it today in the real life cup race, just how important these pit stops can be and how well they can mean for the possible fight for the race win. There's Banks winning the race off pit road. Stempian, I believe, gets the best of Schaefer for second, as there's a little three-wide action there, as I think Schaefer might have a pit road penalty after he went down into the grass. I think he completely went off the pit lane and re-entered it, and that's going to result in a pit road penalty for him. Craig Parks as well, because he is also slow just in front of Schaefer and was letting a couple of cars go. So trouble here for the Drinking Bros Racing duo.
Yeah, for Schaefer, we saw the right side dip into the grass, and the car just kept drifting to the right. So I don't know if that was maybe eyes not on the racetrack, not on pit road, but Schaefer did, in fact, get into the grass. You'll see it here, right behind Stempian. You know, sometimes drivers do peek out of line to get a better perspective down pit road, see where their pit stall is, but Schaefer had both right tires, yeah, and he's speeding on pit road. So not only is there that first strike, there's the double whammy for the Bass Pro Shop Chevrolet. It leaves Schaefer off of pit road all the way at the back. He'll rejoin the field inside the top 10 still, but he'll be in 8th.
Yeah, the left sides even went off right around there, and you can see him speeding up, getting level with Stempian. I can't say I've seen this before.
I know, very odd situation there for Schaefer, but he is a non-playoff driver, so it will not affect the battles up front. However, for the $25, it is going to leave him with a bit more work to do in the middle of the top group. But like you said, with the attrition from 17 starters tonight down to 14 with only 13 cars on the lead lap, I think any mistake by Schaefer that doesn't kill his race car and take him out of the race, it's going to put him back in track position, but you're still running for top 15. Plenty of opportunities to gain those spots back, and we'll just see how that all works. But with Brandon Banks' stage victory, he will gain the points necessary to shoot above the cut line for now. As we jump into the second stage tonight, another 50 laps on tap. Banks in control. He'll choose the outside lane with his teammate Lawson Peel to help on the outside of row 2, with Cedric Hunter trying to assist the Droppin the Hammah Chevrolet right in front, and the Massachusetts native of Stempian that'll watch Banks take the green flag. First stage complete, second underway here from Kansas Speedway.
And a great jump there for Banks to get clear with help from his teammate Lawson Peel after the choose. Peel might just get clear of Stempian. Stempian trying to hang on as best as he can to the inside as Peel eventually does get clear for that second place spot. Cedric Hunter now side by side with Stephen Harlow for that 4th place spot on the racetrack. Justin Hendry finds himself back up into 6th, and the 11 car had some big front end damage.
And not sure where he picked that up from. Maybe a skirmish down pit road with another driver ahead. But Harlow will have to pick that up, repair that car next time he gets a chance to hit pit road, which may not be anytime soon if we don't get a yellow flag from here on out. Harlow remains on the outside, though. Hunter will stay down low in the effort. They'll nearly make contact in the effort for 4th place, right behind Stempien in the rearview mirror.
And when someone's like that on the outside, despite them having the engine damage, if they're able to just carry that momentum on the outside like the 11's able to do, it's such a difficult pass around here because you're pretty much wide open for a good bit of the racetrack. They're just able to carry it more often than you are. So Hunter will clear there. Now the 23 of Zachary Hall gets an opportunity to try to do so, and you see the 11 struggling here for some speed, possibly due to that front end damage.
And to the inside, here comes Justin Hendry. That's 3 Toyota Camrys down low on that bright white, orange, and silver Project Hopner Chevrolet. There goes Hendry down low. He'll take away 6 as they'll come out of turn 4. And talking with Zachary Hall just last week after the top 3 finish at Darlington, of course, was happy that he was able to squeeze by into this round of 8, but did also tell us that it was another race that got away from him after several runner-up finishes, and most of them to Lawson Peel, who's currently leading the charge right now behind Brandon Banks. Hall did end up with a chance to get around the 9 car in those winning laps, but just caught all that dirty air and then caught lap traffic at a poor time, and that 23 car couldn't find the rotation, didn't end up with the grip necessary to end up around to capture his first career victory. But Hall is still very much determined to capture a win. He knows the speed is there, he knows the discipline is there, he's been able to figure out this series in and out, and race in and race out to understand what it takes to be up at the front at the end. And now Zachary Hall is slowly picking up positions now to the outside of Steven Stempien. He'll make this possible charge for 3rd place.
And you got to remember, a lot of what we see today, it could be what we see in the finale. And you're looking at 4 cars on your screen right now that have an excellent opportunity if they're able to get to Homestead Miami Speedway, where they can contend for that championship race. We know that Lawson Peel's won 9 races this season, and he is really good at Homestead. But we know that also with this format, where all it takes is just one good race, one really good opportunity, and you can take the championship for yourself, it's not exactly a gimme.
It's not. And for Zachary Hall, you got to think a race like this could be a pivotal turning point if he's able to win, because not only would it be his first win and the emotions would come over very quickly, but it would come at the perfect time, setting up right for that Homestead of Miami race in a season where Zachary Hall, like we've seen with a lot of other playoff drivers, really deserves a shot at running for the inaugural DTH Cup Series Championship. He's got a very fast Toyota Camry right now, and despite the early issues and the early contact with Steven Stempien in the midway portion of Stage 1, he's been able to get that car repaired, and that front end nose looks like just like it did when it came off the hauler in the virtual Kansas Speedway. And so Hall will take over 3rd, possible challenge here for 2nd, as his teammate Cedric Hunter will wave in the background, trying to peek up on Steven Stempien, making that proper charge. 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th, all within a couple tenths of a second back to turn 3.
Meanwhile, Brandon Banks has checked out. He is over 8/10 clear of Lawson Peel as it stands right now. Is the number 5 machine. He's just picking him up and putting him down. If you remember, the win that Brandon Banks has from earlier this season came at the Chicagoland Speedway. It is a similar racetrack to Kansas. It doesn't have the curved back straightaway as Chicagoland does, but you consider just how you have to run the racetrack, the pavement age, if you will, and it's not that vastly different. I would say that you can definitely find some comparisons from this racetrack and the Chicagoland Raceway, and that could make some sense as to why Brandon Banks has been able to really put on a good show, as there's now the battle for 2nd. Zachary Hall gets clear of Lawson Peel now, as they're both now over a second off your race leader.
And leading laps seems to breed success for Brandon Banks, because his wins more often come in dominating form, not really in surprising challenges at the front, maybe a last lap pass. The spotlight isn't really there. The highlights aren't necessarily prevalent in Brandon Banks' victories, but that's because he's so good already to be at the front that he doesn't need a standout moment here or there, doesn't need that clutch gene. He's just been able to be consistent and fast, and that was really matters for this Myrtle Beach, South Carolina native, who continues to lead this field and remains up ahead. Although last time by, Zachary Hall started to pick up a couple tenths, so we could see fight for the race lead kick up here with 65 laps complete And when he led 38 laps at Chicagoland, of course that overtime restart put him on edge, but it was really a race that he stood out amongst the field. And another mile and a half that degrades Goodyear Eagles seems to be right in the play for Banks as he continues to keep himself up front. And we'll watch the top 5, all of them still in close range. Now Justin Hendry keeping tabs with the Hello Kitty machine of Cedric Hunter, so we could very well see some side-by-side action back for 5th place. And with all of that attrition, Francisco, I think this may be the point of the race where all of that attrition leads to the long green flag action, a lot of which we saw last Sunday at Darlington.
And we've already seen a good bit of attrition in the early parts of this race. We saw trouble in that first stage, cars having issues, and then ultimately the yellow flag being waited for that 3-car incident. As it stands right now, we got the 13 cars on the lead lap. Muscarella's still struggling with some pace in his car. He got some damage there on the final lap of the stage into the outside wall. But right now, 12 cars are really in the competitive side of the field, and that is less than normal. That we don't normally see that few amount of cars running this close together. So you reduce the number of cars that are running near each other, and that could reduce the risk or the frequency that we could see the yellow flag waving. So with that in mind, if you're any of these race leaders, you have to take care of your tires and expect these long runs to be the norm, because there's just not much room for anything to go wrong like that.
And if you make a mistake over this long stretch, you wear out the tires a little bit too much, and that detriment will come by in a hurry. You know, you'll lose all that track position. The drivers will get around you very quickly. And as an iRacing driver, you very much learned that in the rookie class and a lot of the other ladders up through the A-class series. And of course, when you end up running these next-gen cars, you get a figure of how these machines operate, and the tires really do matter, especially here at these larger mile-and-a-half tracks. There was our Charlie Bauer Photography onboard camera with Justin Hendry. So far, the man holding the $25 is the current best-running non-playoff driver. We'll keep an eye on that fight as we move forward in tonight's race. And you watch the man right in front of Cedric Hunter, the Canadian for Category 5 Esports. We've looked at his overall season, and we've told ourselves, if the best driver isn't Lawson Peel, and if we keep him out of the equation, Cedric Hunter just may be the next best thing. And over the last several races, particularly in these playoffs, Francisco, he has impressed. It all started with the opening round of the postseason, surviving the huge battles at the end to win his first career race early June at Charlotte Motor Speedway, and then not that long ago was able to get right within grasp of his rival Lawson Peel to the inside in the final few laps at Bristol, and just unfortunately was just a couple of hundredths of a second short. This was the white flag lap with Stepien in the background, side by side off of turn 4, and Hunter was not able to get the race victory then, but he's been very close, hasn't finished outside of the top 10 in these playoffs since that Charlotte victory, so another win may be brewing and potentially a Championship 4 appearance.
Heating up at the right time. That's exactly what Cedric Hunter has been doing throughout these playoffs. Outside of the 9 car, he's definitely been one of the best drivers here, because you can't argue with those 4 wins in a row that Lawson Peel's put up. He's going for 5 in a row. Is really impressive stuff that he could be doing here today, this evening. But we still have a long ways to go. Only 72 laps out of 200 into this one. And Lawson Peel right now runs in the 3rd spot, just a little bit ahead of Cedric Hunter. And he has Steven Stepien behind him, and Zachary Hall just in front, and they're all slowly starting to accordion up to Brandon Banks. It looks like Banks had driven the car out there, gotten that big lead, but in doing so, might have used the goodie in his tire, because he is now consistently a 2/10 slower than everybody else behind him, and that's slowly starting to show up because the lead is now within a quarter of a second.
It's Brandon Banks versus the world right now. His last lap of 31.196 for Hall, Peel, Stepien, and Cedric Hunter back to the top 5, all of them within that 30.9 second range. And just now is where Brandon Banks is able to find that extra speed and kick back into high gear, 30.967 for Banks. However, there will be charging drivers right behind, so potentially the pressure is on. Now Hall will have to deal with another threat. This time it's Peel. Battle to the inside in turn 3. The Napa Auto Care Chevrolet will have the nose in front, and Hall will try and fight. However, the dirty air might just be too much to overcome, and that is indeed the case. Lawson Peel to 2nd.
And we know Lawson Peel is going to try to make up for the woes of that 9 car. He was having a moment after the Cup race at Dover, just not really too happy with Alex Gustafson and everything that happened with the 9 car. He's going to decide possibly that he's going to make up for the 9 car's woes in the Cup race and make it up for it here.
A lot of grievances aired out for the Chase Elliott fan base after the Dover race earlier this afternoon. But I think Lawson, in his own world here in this Droppin the Hammah Cup series, understands that the 9 seems to be good luck even when you don't qualify in a series like this. And Peel will step up in a second. Now it's really all about how he's able to overcome the deficit back to his teammate in Brandon Banks. And I'm not sure, Francisco, if that mindset for Peel is really go out and win this thing outright. Of course, you can lock into the final round, but he understands that his teammate is up right in front. If he can get, at least for now, another stage victory, it could be that mindset of getting the entire team to eat off with a plate, get Brandon Banks a stage victory, get him as many points as possible to give him at least a solid entryway into Talladega. And then Peel could go on after and win the race if he wants to advance to Homestead Miami Speedway. Obviously, not sure if that's the case between either of the two teammates, but could be a plan worthy of the Droppin the Hammah, or the Droppin Drinkin' Bros Racing Group. Couldn't even say that 2 times, but nonetheless, Brandon Banks, if he can get another stage victory tonight, it could very well help the case for DBR to put as many drivers into the championship 4 as possible.
They got those 2 remaining that are running in the front, Brandon Banks, Lawson Peel, and they can work together certainly in these stages. I'm not sure. I don't think you could tell anybody in the final stage of a race in the closing laps, like trying to orchestrate how there's going to be a pass for the win or something like that. I think drivers are all going to be very selfish in that aspect and try to battle respectively, but go for that race win outright and try to take all the glory for themselves. I mean, hey, I got speed weeks coming up, and slide job, I qualified 31st out of a qualifying group of 62 drivers, Kenneth, believe it or not. And I will be rolling off from, I believe that is 16th in the opening duel this upcoming Tuesday. I'm already locked into the main show, just over a week away, but just looking to see if I can learn what this new next-gen car is at the super speedways. I've yet to have done that, but I'm hoping that I can learn what I can take from there and try to make up for last season's Daytona event.
I was just about to say, I'm like, you're locked into the show. I was just about to mention running the gauntlet, but I guess that's not the case if you're not having to qualify yourself in for now. But are you a bit nervous to run in this next-gen car? Because it's different. I'm not entirely sure if it'll be the same way it was a couple months ago.
I ran at a couple of different racetracks in different situations, and I like some. There's others I don't like as much. I get the proper opportunity at a super speedway setting on Tuesday, and I like what I've seen here at Kansas. I like what I've seen at Kentucky. I've liked what I've seen at a lot of those opening races. At this point, I'm just looking to have a better season than I did last time. I don't think you can have a worse effort than what I had at last season. I got that win at Dover, and from there on, just one top 5 finish, and so many incidents I was a part of, both by my doing and just being at the wrong place at the wrong time. So anything that's better than that, I'll take.
You know what they say, the only way is up. So there could be some positive times ahead. Hopefully that's the case as Peel continues to crunch down that gap to his teammate Brandon Banks. It's now within half a second, but no real inroads made by either driver. They continue to kind of flip-flop on lap time gain between the 5 and the 9 cars. So with just about 16 laps to go here in the second stage from Kansas, still 1, 2, 3, Banks, Peel, and that 23 car of Zachary Hall. A lot of drivers in this field, many of them the mainstay names that we've seen all season long. One name missing from the entry list is Richard Swavely, who's joining us via the YouTube chat tonight on the KBueno Racing Network. He's in Salt Lake instead of his usual home of Casper, Wyoming, getting ready for a Baby Metal, Ginger, and Bloody Wood show tomorrow night. Swavely, very much known as a metalhead fan, metalhead of the series. His team name is Heavy Metal Jesus Motorsports, and he's been a great addition to this series off of the cusp of the Sunoco Cup Series days. And while he watches the racetrack action unfold here from Kansas, going to be very happy to see him hopefully back at Talladega Super Speedway next Sunday as we try to decide those drivers that move forward into the Championship 4. Well, as we get the long green flag run here from the virtual Kansas Speedway, let's turn up the sounds and crank it up here on the KBueno Racing Network. Beautiful sounds all around this virtual Kansas Speedway as Brandon Banks continues to lead by just over 3 car lengths to his teammate Lawson Peel, Zachary Hall, Cedric Hunter, and Steven Stepien currently round out the running top 5 as we'll cross the line for the final 10 laps here in this second stage. We've seen a lot of green flag racing so far. Plenty of those drivers modulating the throttle. That's the great thing about Crank It Up, Francisco, at these tracks is that you can understand the level of complexity it takes to roll the car through the center of the corner and at what moments these drivers get right back into the throttle, whether they're downshifting or not. Right now, consensus is stay in 5th gear. And for Brandon Banks, the 5 car, it's helped him stay up front, looking for a second straight stage victory.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of fun to turn the sounds up and just hear the beautiful sound of V8 engines, but it gives you a great opportunity to listen uninterrupted to the onboards and just get an idea of what these drivers are dealing with without us meddling in this with our voices. You just get to hear when they get on the throttle, off the throttle, if they're having to play with it. And you just get a better feel for what they're going through inside these race cars, which unless you're driving in the sim yourself, it's very difficult to determine such things. So it really does give a great opportunity for people at home, people watching on the stream, to have an idea of what's going on.
Gonna have to ask some of these drivers to maybe give me a tutoring lesson sometime in the future, because at Kansas I seem to be a nightmare. I don't know where Kansas lines up on your favorite racetracks to drive in the sim, Francisco, but for me, it's a great track, but I just cannot seem to get a handle of it. I'm not entirely sure what I'm doing wrong, but the right front tire never gives me a good time. It is always terrible. So I don't know if you have any tips maybe for me on how to drive a better time here at Kansas and just make sure the race car is planted.
I mean, I think we can learn from what we've seen during this race. A lot of the guys are sticking to the bottom, really using the outside if they're trying to make some kind of pass or hold on, but otherwise looks like everybody's sticking to the bottom. So I would guess just try to run it on that lower line and trying not to go like a full qualifying mode effort, and you might be just okay on the long runs.
You know, we talked to Keelan Belsha earlier on this year in one of the races that he took part of, not in this series, but in one of the series broadcasted on the KBueno Racing Network, and he told us one thing that was difficult to get around with this next-gen car is to not overdrive it subconsciously, because you think that everything's okay, that you're driving the car gingerly. Then all of a sudden, either your right front tire or the right rear tire goes away, and the competition behind you starts growing in the rearview mirror, and all of a sudden, all that track position goes away in an instant. It's kind of the same deal for a lot of guys that manage this car, but for these guys at the front with 6 laps to go in Stage 2, they have handled it, they have dealt with the adversity, with the challenge of understanding this machine, and throughout 2025, they have been able to master it. Some of the best drivers you're finding here still in contention for a championship. And if you're looking at the top end of your screen, our horizontal ticker, you'll see the drivers' numbers in bright green and a gray background. Those are to identify the current drivers still in charge for the championship. You look at 1 through 5, all of them running for the title still.
Incredible stuff. This is where you get all your best drivers in the season, throw them together, and make do with whoever comes out the best. May the best driver win, and we'll have these next 3 races determine the 4 that'll battle for that championship finale in just under a month's time on August 10th at the Homestead Miami Speedway. Late in this run, here's another effort by Zachary Hall trying to challenge the Lawson Peel machine for second. We saw Zachary Hall get past Peel earlier in the run, then Peel got back by the 23. But now late in this run, it's the 23 starting to circle back and trying to get back up to the 9 car, battling for second. All of this going on as Brandon Banks has used the Queen Air to his advantage and has extended his lead pretty massively up to 1.4 seconds. There's Hall looking to the inside.
Beautiful shot with our onboard camera at the rear end of Lawson Peel's car, because you saw the differentiating lanes between the 2 cars. Peel washing up high in the apex to cut down low using a diamond approach, while Hall is using that traditional right up high and then arc down low as you can and try and ride the momentum off of the banking, coming down to that 10 degrees on the front straightaway. For now, Hall unsuccessful in his approach to get to the inside of Peel's Chevrolet with 3 laps to go, now 2 to go in the second stage. And with all of this occurring for second on back, that has allowed Brandon Banks, like you said, Francisco, to enter his own zip code in an island amongst the rest. He'll catch one of the lap traffic cars perhaps right up until the stage comes to a close at lap 100, but it seems like all will be confirmed for the Myrtle Beach, South Carolina native as Hall falls back. Bit of a mistake. His teammates in range in the battle for third.
Yeah, he had a bit of a moment there off of turn 2, had to get out of the gas, and that allowed Cedric Hunter to close up to the back of the 23. So both of these drivers are going to try to see if they can pounce and make a move on Lawson Peel in this next lap and a half.
This was the big struggle for these two Category 5 Esports Toyotas after Darlington, getting around the dirty air and just getting around Lawson Peel in general. That's what helped Cedric Hunter get up to second in those final few laps as the freaky fast Toyota of Hall fell back in the midst of traffic. Final lap here in stage 2 from Kansas Speedway. A long green flag stretch has allowed this 5 car to stretch his legs. He has been outright dominant since the drop of the green flag restart. And while Lawson Peel and Zachary Hall gave him a fight for a bit of his money, Banks has held on to the jackpot for now. And for the 3rd time in his Droppin the Hammah Cup Series career, Brandon Banks will gain the playoff points and then win a stage. This time from Kansas, 2nd stage victory here from this speedway, and sweeps it at lap 100.
Good effort here from Brandon Banks to get maximum stage points in today's race. That's really going to help him out in the round and helping his opportunity of making the championship finale. Daniel Holdcroft gets across in 10th place to get the final stage point position, bringing out the caution for the end of stage number 2. And that means that the highest running non-playoff driver as of the end of stage 2 is the 85 of Justin Hendry, as he's been for most of the evening. All it takes is one more final stage, and we'll see who's the highest non-playoff driver running at the checkered flag.
Well, now they got to deal with the longest stint of the race. That is, of course, stage 3. We'll cut into a bit of that final stage because of this caution period. We'll see the drivers come down pit road, and then that's when the strategy book will open. It was an undercut strategy last week at Darlington that helped Lawson Peel stay at the front, and then it was a game of aero blocking to stay up ahead to capture his 9th career victory. Could we see that happen again here at this mile and a half from Kansas? We've seen it happen many a time. That overcut strategy, though, when you get fresh tires late, could be the differentiating factor after somewhat of the trend with the first 2 stages, Stempian and company moving up to the field on fresh rubber. We'll see how big of a factor that is, but everyone will come down. Wholesale service at the exit of 4. Brandon Banks, after sweeping the stages, will bring them on in. Now it's left to tick off the final box and check it to capture his 2nd career victory, but everyone will come down pit road. Look at that list of cars. Not very deep with the amount of attrition we've seen tonight. A couple of drivers will stay out for the wave around, and here comes Banks and the field on pit road.
We'll see if everybody is able to have a clean and smooth pit stop. Progar had to back up his pit stall a little bit, overshot the front end a tad. There goes the 5 car. Peel launches with him. They're going to be pretty level. You see them having to slow down so he can match with the pit road speed, but it is going to be Brandon Banks winning the race off of pit road. Cedric Hunter is able to take away 3rd. Stempian grabs 4th away from Zachary Hall, and Justin Hendry hangs on to 6th.
So Hendry remains as the highest running non-playoff driver, and it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those running for the championship almost in the same order. As we cross the line for the end of stage 2, we'll try and regroup and get them ready for the final stage here tonight from Kansas. Well, let's bring in the stage 1 and stage 2 winner of tonight's race, Brandon Banks. Brandon, it has been a wild ride, specifically over these last few weeks, from what happened to you at Bristol that took you out very early to the recuperation at Darlington last week to squeeze into this round. You were at the very back end of the playoff picture going into tonight. How important are these 2 stage victories to give you that bit of an edge heading into Talladega next week?
Oh, it's definitely huge, man. Like I said, just to get 80 points with these guys, they're so fast up here. So just to come up here and get 2 stage wins like that, it's a big relief. Get a little bit of pad in here and actually maybe come away with a good finish here. So, and it'd be nice to go into next week with a little bit of a lead, maybe on some points, so we're not feeling like we're digging our way out of a hole every round.
Well, leading lap seems to be your forte to get to the race victory. We mentioned those 38 that you led to end up with the W at Chicagoland. In this final stage, what do you think it's going to take from you and this 5 car to get as much performance out of it and walk away with your 2nd career dub?
Well, clean air is really important, so trying to keep it out front here will probably be the best thing to do here. You get back in traffic, and you can burn the right front off it in a hurry. So we're going to try to keep it out front, and keep doing what we've been doing, and you never know.
Well, it's a good race so far for you and a very fast paulscars.com Chevrolet. Brandon, thank you so much for the time. Congrats on the stage victories, and best of luck here in Stage 3.
All right, man. Thank you.
So Brandon Banks will lead the field back to the green flag with his teammate Lawson Peel on the outside of row 1. Banks has won the first 2 stages tonight. Now needs to try and cap off this longest run of the night here from America's Heartland. Back to the restart zone. Field in hand of Brandon Banks leading clear to the start-finish line, chasing to turn 1 as Cedric Hunter gets his pink Toyota to the inside of Lawson Peel for second.
And Hunter clears for second. Momentarily, Peel's able to fight back on the outside, but it's going to be Hunter clearing Lawson Peel for second. We'll see what he's able to do. Zachary Hall fights back for fourth. Peel now peaks to the bottom of the 45. That aligns the teammates you have on the inside. Drinking Bros Racing on the outside. You have Category 5 Esports. How does this work out in terms of the battle at the front? You see Peel aggressively trying to side draft the 45 and not allowing him to get the draft off Banks.
Well, from our last several green flag restarts, the inside line seems to proverbially get the inside advantage after a couple of laps, but Hunter's making sure that he stays up front in the battle for the runner-up spot. Hunter clears the 9 car, and Zachary Hall nearly put his nose to the outside and got around that 9 machine, but so far 1, 2, 3, 4 all within 4/10 of a second. And don't look now, here comes Steven Stepien and Justin Hendry in this fight. They have cleared everybody from about 7th on back. That first battle inside the top 10, Stephen Harlow and Eric Schaefer, as here comes Cedric Hunter, fight to the inside. He may have a charge for the lead.
Peak to the bottom, was hoping to see if he could get that 5 car a little bit loose, as the 23 of Zachary Hall now peaks to the bottom of Lawson Peel. They're side by side for third in the process, and Hall with a strong move on the inside slides up a little bit and he clears Lawson Peel.
Sends dirty air to the Columbus, Mississippi native, and it all works out. Category 5 Esports in a blur takes the field by storm, and now they'll have a shot at getting into that clean air, to which Banks told us right a moment ago that it is so important. And that's exactly what crept up on these 2 drivers in the final laps at Darlington last Sunday and erased a shot at a race victory. Hunter will run up high, stay in that clean air at the very top of the progressive banking, and it's all on how big of a run he can get out of either of these corners to try and catch up to the 5 machine and make it a proper fight. And with all of that attrition we've seen so far this evening, it means that top 10 has spread out very thin. Of course, the competition in the playoff group is very close, but for a lot of these guys, it's been hard to find that advantage. And through a long green flag run in Stage 2, Francisco, I think that was really the setting ground for those drivers strong enough to pull away to do so, and those guys kind of struggling to fall back a little more. And it's been the case with the 11 car of Stephen Harlow, race high 7th after Stage 2, and holding off Eric Schaefer at the moment, but still hasn't been able to find any of that extra gaining ground after repairing some of that front nose damage he picked up earlier on tonight.
It's just been a struggle for the 11. It feels like every single race something happens to him that sets him back from whatever pace he had originally, from whatever track position he had at the start of the race, and he's just always having to play from behind, and today's been no different. Sits in 7th, but when you consider the greater aspect of the playoffs, the top 5 all playoff drivers, that's not going to be good enough for the 11.
And even then, his last 4 races have resulted in top 10s, 2 of them top 5 finishes. 5th place at the road course at Watkins Glen, then picked up a 4th place at Texas. Then Bristol and Darlington, just a bit more shaky overall. We mentioned the bit of a spill there from leading the race early on in Stage 1 at the Lady in Black. Rolled off second and took the lead almost instantaneously from his teammate and brother Ross Harlow, but still was able to come away with a 6th place finish. And then at Bristol, despite all of the chaos that went down, the Project Hopner Chevrolet was able to finish in 8th. But you're right, Francisco. It's felt like pressure has been on this 11 car all season long. And the many faults that have occurred throughout this season, a lot of them happen at pretty poor times. So it puts him in a position where he's had to claw from behind. And going into tonight's race, Harlow is in a position where he does need to gain those points. Came into tonight -1 to that cut line in the front running 4. So we'll keep an eye on the Project Hopner Chevrolet as the fight for second keeps on at turn 1. Zachary Hall getting to the inside of his teammate Cedric Hunter, and Hunter just letting his teammate through. Not going to offer resistance because he sees what's happening in the rearview mirror between Stepien and Peel. The last thing he would want is for them to get into the action and have a bit of fun as well.
Paul had a great run on Hunter, and Hunter saw it and just didn't really fight it all that much. But Peel is trying to see if he could catch up and battle with these two. All the while, Brandon Banks has really put on a great effort of just showing us of what the combination of short run speed and long run speed is, but also just how important that clean air is. As soon as he got the lead in this race, he has not looked back, and there he is, just continuing to lead laps in this one as second through fifth all stay nose to tail, just really unable to get away from one another.
That's a great point. Banks has demonstrated, particularly in stage 2, what it's like to stay up front without letting that pressure get to him, because we mentioned the fact that Banks had stretched out his legs, got out to a big lead, then started giving up time to the drivers second on back. But as soon as those drivers in the runner-up positions started to creep forward, Banks hopped back on the gas pedal, got back into the zone, and even with the fact that he had pulled out ahead so early on in the run, he was still able to keep himself level with everyone else, if not a little bit better. And that's what enabled him to go out and win that second stage just off of pure performance and saving his tires and using them when it matters most. We'll keep an eye on whether those two drivers behind, and maybe this third car here in Lawson Peel, what they do differently in this third stage. Because we've seen not only from Hall, not only from Hunter, but not only from Peel, they seem to have good mid-run pace, Francisco. But when you get long enough into the run, that's where they start to hemorrhage a lot of that time to the race leader.
And Peel had a bit of a moment there in 1 and 2, tried to arc it in a way to get under the 45, got shut off, and then on exit had a bit of a slide off the corner. So not exactly going to help the tires on the 9 car, but it's working out for Category 5 Esports in terms of holding off Peel, at least right now, but they haven't really been able to make much of an imprint at the front. So I'm wondering, with this run being as long as it is, are they just hoping to keep this track position and then try to see what they can do about Banks in the final half of the stage?
You know what they say, teamwork makes the dream work, and we've seen that a lot at the super speedways, but even here at these smaller tracks, 1.5 miles, even at the tracks like Auto Club in Michigan, the Category 5 Esports camp, they are not that big of a team. They are only 3 drivers deep, and they've missed Robert A. Moyer Jr., especially in this back half of these Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series playoffs. But these two are strong, a very much dynamic duo when it comes to their level of performance each and every week. And with their several runner-up or third-place finishes this season, they're probably one of the hungriest teams of the group, if it's not Droppin' the Hammah, with the likes of Steven Stempian and Ross Harlow, who have been able to capture at least one victory this season. Category 5 Esports has only had that one win via Cedric Hunter at Charlotte to kickstart the playoffs, and his teammate Zachary Hall has been inching close enough to capture a checkered flag, but just hasn't been there yet. And here's Lawson Peel, fantastic run out of turn 2, will give him within at least a car length or less to the third place car of Cedric Hunter, but he'll stay back and try once more to gain the run through 3 and 4. We've seen a lot of that happen, the switcheroos of lanes, trying to use the grip as much as possible. So far, that Napa car still cannot find a way to break through this Category 5 barrier.
And all the while, they've started to slowly get a little bit of a gap back to Steven Stempian, who's now fallen to the clutches of Justin Hendry as they battle for 5th. All of this going on a consistent 7 or so tenths off the race lead, but there's Stempian now, who's got about 8 tenths in front of him to Lawson Peel, and Justin Hendry just behind him, trying to see if he can pounce and get himself up into the top 5, and Stephen Harlow's not too far behind them as well.
What a race for Justin Hendry tonight, a driver who has only a couple top 10s to his name. You know, we mentioned that Daytona race, how heartbreaking it was for him, but ever since, we really haven't seen him in this series. A top 10 at Daytona, even after crashing off turn 4. And then when we came back to the World Center of Racing to close off the regular season, and what was a phenomenal finish to the end, Hendry still came away with a top 10 and ended up 8th, and actually picked up another top 10 at the D-shaped oval in the Irish Hills of the Michigan International Speedway. But it's been a standout run for the 85 car tonight. Not only could he get the $25 for being the best running non-playoff driver, but he could make a huge statement for these guys at the front of the field. Now under pressure, there's Stephen Harlow rolling from the outside lane as Hendry was fighting a loose condition in the middle of 1 and 2. Harlow moves on by, Hendry rolls back to 7th, but still a phenomenal run for this 85 car tonight.
Great run for him as he's trying to capture the bonus, the $25. He's going to have to beat Eric Schaefer, who's been his biggest competitor in that prize money here for tonight's race. And what this does now with Harlow moving up to 6th is now playoff drivers are 1st through 6th to find the other 2 playoff drivers that are not in that position, you have to go back to Ross Harlow, who's been out of this race since very early days, and then you also have to go back, I believe, to, I want to say it was possibly the 48, somebody else that's in the playoffs, as we do have 6 accounted for, but either way, all of them are up at the front.
It's Warren Kyle Keith, who's not in this race tonight, so it's a big blow for the St. Augustine, Florida native, as there are the playoff standings going into tonight's race. You mentioned the fine margins, 1 point from 3rd all the way back to 8th. So you see the 2 different scenarios at play on opposite ends of the spectrum. Harlow with that huge crash that took him out of the race early on in stage number 1. That will lose him a ton of points heading into Talladega next Sunday night. And then for guys like Brandon Banks, who's been able to sweep both stages tonight, he will jump very high up the standings with the amount of points he's been able to pick up alongside those extra playoff bonus points that play a big role in getting that buffer, especially as we get to the middle race of the round next week. So a lot of changes from the beginning of this race when it was set up like this to what we're seeing right now. I think the only constant is seeing Lawson Peel at the front, possibly Steven Stempian either in the top 3 or still above that sacred cut line. And that's kind of up to the Category 5 esports drivers who are hanging above and below the cut line entering tonight's race of Hall and Hunter, the way they've been able to set up their destiny for tonight's race and through the first 2 stages. Solid points all throughout the race, but just have not been able to stand out as much as drivers like Brandon Banks have. And once again, Francisco, like we saw in stage 2, it's going to be another crunch up in time between 1st and 2nd. Hall is gaining more momentum, but does Brandon start putting on the afterburners right now and pull away as we get down to what's going to be the final 75, now 74 laps left in this race?
Well, we still have a long ways to go in this race, so I think every side is not showing everything they have, and neither should they, because they still have, like you mentioned, over 70 laps left to go in this one. So we still have a green flag pit stop left to go in this race, and that could very well affect how this race goes. And we'll see how the pit road sequence goes, how getting on and off pit road, executing the pit stop, all that will play a huge factor. And we know that last week we saw a handful of occasions drivers miss pit road. Kansas is no easy pit road to get into either. It can be very tricky to get down to pit road speed. So getting on and off pit road, getting on and off cleanly will matter just as much as when you get on.
So this is our run so far. 1st through 5th, Banks, Hall, Hunter, Peel, and Stempian. And then more playoff drivers for 6th place, Stephen Harlow, Justin Hendry, Eric Schaefer, Craig Parks, and Casey Neiden, the current running top 10. Well, we got a lot of racing for you upcoming on the KBueno Racing Network. Later next week, we have the return of the SAC Cup Series after several weeks off. They'll return at the virtual Iowa Speedway. That coverage will begin at around 8:35 p.m. Eastern here on the KBueno Racing Network YouTube channel as that regular season rolls on. And then the middle race of this round of 8 in the Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series comes at you from the virtual Talladega Super Speedway. You'll find that coverage at the same time we usually go live, 8:10 p.m. Eastern on July 27th, as we'll roll from the 2.66 mile behemoth of a super speedway. And then the next week, we'll close out the round of 8 and decide those 4 that will advance to Homestead in Miami. And the following week after that, SAC Cup Series will continue their regular season action. They're inching closer to their midseason madness and their playoff tournament that'll happen at the end of the season to decide the eventual winner of the series this year. So a lot of action. And Francisco, I'm going to be completely honest. I think in that several week break to which, July 4th came around, we didn't have any Droppin' the Hammah. SAC Cup Series has been off for a couple of weeks. I've kind of been going crazy. I haven't been able to do as many shows as I'd like to. Had that great trip to North Carolina, but in terms of sim racing shows, it has been very sparse lately, and I feel like my brain is going all over the place. But it's great to have some racing action back tonight with DTH coming back into full swing as the playoffs really intensify. So as we get SAC Cup Series on Thursday, and then we'll keep rolling through this series, I guess I'll get back into that motion one way or another.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a very nice break, Kenneth, because we look at the run from here to the end of the year, and it is not going to be an easy one for us up here in the booth. We obviously Droppin' the Hammah will end August 10th, the season finale, but you look at August, it'll be a big momentum change. We'll have 4 wide back in action on Wednesday nights. We'll have the SAC Cup Series, of course, running parallel. Slide Job, even though we don't cover that in the booth, I participate, and many other drivers participate in that series as well. So that's our Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday nights. Our midweeks are going to be pretty action-packed, if you will.
They are. We're going to have a lot of fun as well, though, covering all the storylines, covering the drivers, and just giving you everything and everything all here on the KBueno Racing Network. Going to be one of the busiest times of the year as we roll forward. And Brandon Banks focused back on the racing tonight. 0.8 of a second still ahead of Zachary Hall. His teammate Cedric Hunter has been in close chase, so there could very well be another fight, this time building up for second with the 45 gaining ground on his teammate, just like we saw in the waning laps at Darlington last Sunday. And then Lawson Peel has been looming a bit, not really dangerously. He stayed in the top 4, but he hasn't been able to pick up all that time needed to make this a proper fight for what's going to be second on the racetrack. Hunter still in chase, right in the tire tracks. He'll fire off down the inside, pivot down to the apex, and Hall will give him the spot, at least for now. Cedric Hunter up to P2.
Hunter moves to second. This is our closest battle on the racetrack besides the battle for 10th with Chris Progar and Casey Knighton. Just how much field spread that we have going on here in this race. But Hunter moves back up into second, and we'll see what he does now as he ran a 10th quicker than Brandon Banks on that lap, even despite making the pass on Zachary Hall. But all it takes is for Hunter to stay within a second until the green flag pit stops, and that can matter because if you're within a second, that means anything can happen, whether you pit a lap early, a lap later, getting on and off pit road cleanly like we mentioned. And we could see possible pit stops here soon. I know they've ran only 36 laps. The maximum fuel tank could probably take you about 65 laps. But that means that the fuel window is open now. And I don't think anybody will pit on the front side, but we could see plenty of drivers maybe try to split it down the middle. Others might try to go to the end of their current fuel run, which will place us between lap 150 and lap 170.
So it's going to be a crucial call for those guys to come down pit road. And for Lawson, it worked out on the undercut strategy last Sunday. Category 5 Esports have an opportunity to learn from that situation just 1 week ago and be able to be at the top of the board. But all eyes still on Brandon Banks, who's still about 0.8 ahead on the next car in line. Huge slap of the wall for Zachary Hall. The right front tire is starting to give way, and here comes Lawson Peel in the charge for third to the inside.
You can tell that the tires have just gone away on the 23. It's what Brandon Banks was talking about. If you're in traffic, you probably run that right front tire off the race car, and it's going to struggle from there on out. And now Peel side by side for the third spot, should be able to easily clear. And with the field spread that we now have with these cars ever since the update, Kenneth, yeah, the 23's burned off his tires, but it doesn't look like, as long as he doesn't have a major incident, it doesn't look like he'll lose that many spots. Worst case scenario, before the green flag stops, he can fall to the clutches of 5th or 6th. But in the past, losing that amount of distance to the race leader would mean probably first through like 15th or 20th, and now not losing as many positions does give some kind of better reward as it did previously.
That's a great point, and it tallies off to what we saw at Texas Motor Speedway, the race that you covered by yourself in the broadcast booth. You kind of had a first-hand experience to see what that new next-gen build did to the level of separation between drivers in the field over long runs like this. And at Darlington, we saw it a lot. You know, some of the pit road strategy kind of broke up the action, but for the most part, everybody pulled up in their own zone, and mistakes from drivers wouldn't be punished as much because you'd have so much distance to the car behind you that it wouldn't really matter. And we're seeing the same effect happen here from Kansas. So as we roll on through this race, I'm sure Zachary Hall wouldn't like to lose more spots, but thankful enough that he still has some time left to get his car back in a good place and not let Steven Stepien gain any more ground to step into the top 4. So with 60 laps to go in this race, approaching 50 laps remaining from the Heartland, we still have not seen any of the front-running 6 come down pit road. Really anyone in this top 10 for the matter. A lot of the guys have remained out on the racetrack. If you're looking for anybody that could come down pit road first, probably will be some of those drivers at the back like Daniel Holdcroft, Casey Knighton, and the likes of Chris Progar for the TOW Racing team. But so far, no dice for anyone that's looking to enter pit road for a bit of the fresh Goodyear Eagles and the fuel to get them to the end of the race. Well, you mentioned the late end of 2025 is being super, super active. Droppin the Hammah's going to enter their championship finale 4 Wide is going to kick back up again. The SAC Cup Series is going to enter the very heart of their regular season into that eliminator chase. And then we're going to have one more surprise for you. On behalf of us, the KBueno Racing Network is excited to bring the KBRN Truck Series to you this fall. Starting in August, we'll kick off at the virtual Daytona International Speedway, and we'll go all the way to early December, where, of course, you know me and Francisco, we're going to have Homestead of Miami Speedway as the finale. Hopefully, we'll be able to broadcast all of those races, but we'll open up, sign up soon. So if you want to get in on some of the action with us at the KBueno Racing Network, you can do so. Join our Discord and have a lot of fun as we get ready to bring that series to you live on the channel. Francisco, we've been so excited to kind of announce this, bring this forward, and still kind of in the phases of putting the whole series together, but kind of a good way to get all of the people at the KBueno Racing Network together and bring us a good series with the trucks, something we haven't seen in a while on the KBueno Racing Network, I believe since Oscar many years ago.
That's bringing something back from 2021. It's been a long while since we've covered a truck series, and it would be a great fit. Keelan Belch has been an advocate for trying to have some kind of series like this on the channel for a handful of years now, and finally, it looks like we got the pieces in the right places. We got a schedule up. We have a couple of things in place in the works in the background. And if you're interested in signing up, you can message myself or Kenneth Bueno or any of our admin teams that include Charlie Byer, Keelan Belsha for information with the signups, and we'll deliver a date. But we're looking for plenty of drivers that want to have a good time in that truck series that runs Monday nights, and you can find more information when it is all set up in the Discord channel. And I'm happy about this, Kenneth. And I think the thing that'll make me happiest about that series is that we're swapping places essentially. I'm going to be in your shoes, and you're going to be out there on the racetrack competing for a championship. How does that sound?
I really don't know. I mean, I'm excited to run because it's something I don't get to do often here on iRacing. You know, I run officials here and then, but I don't run any leagues full time. And if I do run a league, it's probably a quick one-off, and usually that race is over within the first 25 minutes of it happening and me signing up. But it is going to be good. I'm kind of feeling the pressure, Francisco, because now I get to kind of feel what you and Keelan and Charlie and everyone has to feel when they go on the racetrack, and we're kind of all watching them on the series network. So, you know, hopefully I'm able to do you guys right. I'm able to put on a good show, have a lot of fun, and we'll see how that all unfolds. Hopefully it ends up with some good runs, maybe a win, but I'm not going to predict that for myself that early on. Zachary Hall is on pit road, by the way, Francisco. You are picking up on him pitting from the top 5.
Yeah, he came down pit road, was struggling with the grip, and it makes sense to me perfectly that he's going to be the first one of those making it down the pit lane into his stall perfectly. And it looks like Cedric Hunter's going to follow into pit road this lap as well. So and he's going to speed on pit road. That is going to be very clear as day, speeding on pit road for Cedric Hunter. He'll bring it down to the pit stall, get his service, and then serve his penalty. That was pretty obvious there.
Smoke coming up from the front tires of Cedric Hunter's Toyota, and his race in contention may just be done with 52 laps to go. There's Brandon Banks on the left side of your screen, still up and running in the race lead by now 1.5 seconds over his teammate Lawson Peel. Lawson will stay out the extra lap, and Steven Stepien running third will continue on for the extra trip around this 1.5 miles. There's Cedric Hunter getting his service now. Jacks are up on the left side, going to get the other set of fresh tires on the right side of the car, but the time will kill him, and it will kill him dearly here at the end of this race.
Yeah, there he is serving his penalty, which I believe is about 40-second hold, which obviously in real life we see drive-through penalties being the normal penalty assessed as pit road speeding, which me and plenty of others have always questioned why it's 40-second holds on the sim. Hopefully we get that changed one day to where we can get those drive-through penalties and be a little bit more accurate. You lose 2-3 laps just for the speeding on pit road. So hopefully we get that in place sometime in the day. But right now, right here, it's Cedric Hunter serving that pit road penalty, and there he is back on his way. He is 2 laps down.
He'll be down in 12th. His teammate Zachary Hall, because he is the only other car to come down pit road, he is now a lap down in 11th. But that is par for the course for what we've seen in these long green flag runs. Still nobody in this top 5 have elected to hit the pit lane, so they will stay out as long as they can make it happen. 48 laps on a tank of fuel for these guys over the course of this final stage, and you could go very much longer with the 100% fuel on tap for these race cars, but the main concern is tires, tires, tires.
I think we saw those Category 5 esports drivers are definitely trying to split the run. They pitted just a little bit before the official halfway point, but they were trying to go about an even 50 on each of the tire sets. And considering their issues or just how far back they were, it doesn't look like much of the field really feels impressionable on that kind of strategy. Zachary Hall is making some ground back up as Casey Knighton and Chris Progarm have made their way into the pit lane, as well as Daniel Holdcroft. So Hall back up to 8th. He is the first car one lap down. Numerous others are on pit road as they're making now their exit off the pit lane. Nobody else has really made an entrance as of now, but Hall is going to look to try and see if he can make up some lap time right now and see if he could get the clean air on Banks and eventually try to do to him what he had been doing to the field.
Again, the undercut strategy worked out for Lawson Peel last week at Darlington, and it hurt the possible chances to win for not only Zachary Hall, but his teammate in Cedric Hunter. Now, with only one Category 5 esports driver left in the mix to run for the lead and for the win as of right now, he's going to have to hope that this undercut strategy puts him in the right place at the right time. But with all of this motion at the front of this field, none of them have signaled coming down to pit road, so could it curtail any advantage given to the 23 cars? Eric Schaefer comes down pit road, and I believe he will be joined by Craig Parks.
Craig Parks and Eric Schaefer teammates are down the pit lane together here on lap 154. Both of them are going to be pulling into their pit stalls and getting service on their cars. And we'll see if anybody else decides to bring it onto pit lane. We're already about halfway through this strategy of those who are trying to make their way into the pit lane, but we still have at least another, I would say, 10 to 15 laps before most of the field has to go in for fuel at the very least. That's how much longer the leaders can certainly go on the tank of fuel that they currently have in their car. Banks, Peel, they're continuing to pull away from Stempien, but how much longer can they stay out knowing that Zachary Hall is slowly starting to creep up there and could eventually take over the track position? And there they are, the race leaders on the pit road.
There goes Banks, there goes Peel. Steven Stempien will remain on the track. He'll lead another lap here, under 50 laps to go from Kansas Speedway. So finally, the straw broke on the camel's back, and the two Drinkin' Bros Racing teammates will put themselves on pit road. A mistake here could cost some time, and there's a mistake for Lawson Peel. Just overshot the pit box. His teammate Banks will get out much more ahead, but how much will that hurt the 9 car?
Well, it'll definitely keep him somewhere in second or third, but we'll see relative to Hall what that means. Banks is able to exit with a pretty healthy gap over the 9 car, which he already had. And there's the blend between Zachary Hall and Brandon Banks. Banks is going to try to get up to speed, but you should see the 23 with that undercut will get past that 5 car, get a little bit of track position, a little bit of a time gap to the 5, and now the 5 has a tire advantage to his favor to try and work with for the final 43 laps of this race. It is 9 laps, give or take, that the difference is between the tires on the 23 and the 5. The gap sits at about 3 seconds. The question is, can Banks run down Zachary Hall and then secondly get past him?
Mind you, all of them are a lap down or more. It's third on back, starting with Hall. That is a lap behind the 2 leaders that have stayed out the longest so far. And your leader on the left side of your screen, Steven Stempien, and the man who sits about 4.5 seconds behind in Justin Hendry. So the 85 car will not signal down pit road, at least for right now. Actually, he's going to come off turn 4 now and stay out the extra lap. So we'll watch as the front 2 lead in the final stage of this race with 40 laps to go. Next time they cross the start-finish line. And you're right, Francisco, that advantage is huge. At a 9-lap difference in favor of Banks, a lot of the time could be made up here. With how consistent Banks has been all night long, Hall is going to have to hope that the aero game is enough to stave off the South Carolinian.
That's what he's got to hope for, because the gap is already down to 2 seconds. Banks has been half a second a lap quicker than Hall with those 9-lap newer tires. So Zachary Hall has to hope that as soon as Banks uses up the goodie in those tires and gets out of the freshness of them, that it kind of tunes it down a little bit, that the advantage goes away. It's not nearly as much as it is right now. And then on top of that, hopes that he gets caught in the dirty air. So the 23 is going to have to do some mirror driving here on the 5 if he wants to go for his first career win. And looking at the gap, Lawson Peel's nearly 3 seconds behind the pair from that time he lost on pit road.
But all that Peel needs is an ignited battle between Banks and Hall, and that really could negate any advantage that those two drivers have, pull Peel back into the mix, and that leaves one driver still on the lead lap. Steven Stempien, the race leader, is holding out hope that either a yellow or this strategy call could give him the upper hand for his second career victory here in 2025. And now, as when he'll hop on the brakes, he'll slide the car the entry of pit road, and he's going to slide too wide. Unsafe pit entry for the race leader.
And he's going to have to serve that penalty. He's going to have to bring it down. He probably might not have enough fuel to go around another lap, and he's already committed to going at the pit lane speed. Unsafe entry. And this is what we talked about, Kenneth. I talked about this before we had any pit stops, is that this track might not be Darlington, but it is still a very difficult pit road to get in and out of. You see Stempien frustrated there as he's getting the service done on his car. But multiple drivers have been struck by this pit entry and the pit road here tonight, and it is going to play a factor in our championship.
These 1.5 miles have proven to be very difficult to come down pit road on. Homestead, it will be no different for the finale in a couple of weeks' time. And here's now the battle for the lead as they have all unlapped themselves. Zachary Hall is watching Brandon Banks in the mirror by 1/10. It is close as they catch the lap car in Muscarella. Here comes Brandon Banks. Look to the inside as Muscarella was down there coming off of pit road. And Banks will get shut at the door. Hall stays in the lead.
All he has to do is try to hold off Banks for enough laps, and it could hurt the 5's momentum and maybe warm up his tires enough to where it'll struggle for Banks to try and make that pass. So this is critical laps here for the 23 if he can do anything to stave off this 5 car.
Behind them by 3.5 seconds is the third running car in Lawson Peels. So again, if these two slow each other up enough, there could be the opportunity for the 9-time race winner this season to go at it and end up with double-digit race wins this year. But for a shot at the championship 4, it comes down to these two. Banks up high on the progressive banking, powers on the outside. Brandon Banks surges up ahead and takes the lead at lap 164.
He just went up there and took it from him. What a way to get to the outside. Just drive it in there with the grip and go around on the outside. What a move, Brandon Banks.
What a move by Brandon Banks. It gets him to the lead. And now it's all on whether Zachary Hall can respond. Take a second look at it. We got to double take this, Francisco. How wonderful of a play it was. And while Banks has been very faithful to the white line at the bottom of the racetrack, this time he trusts the outside wall to take him all the way around turns 1 and 2. The fresh tire power is there. Nothing that Hall could do to shut him down. And that is exactly what will change hands in this race coming down to the final 35.
Just unreal. That is such a great move by Banks to get the position. And Hall was trying to play which lane that Banks was going to go. He was hoping that Banks would go to the bottom, but Banks went to the top. Hall didn't go all the way up there, and that was enough. He had the clean air, he had the grip, and he had the advantage of running the outside lane, and that was enough for Banks to make that awesome move and get by for the race lead. And now he can try to put some distance between himself and Hall to try and see if he can run these final 34 laps cleanly and get to the checkered flag for a second win on the season, but I think more importantly, an opportunity to race for the championship in 3 weeks.
Again, Banks had come into this race dead last in the playoff fight. He was -1 because everyone was reset at 3,000 points apiece, so it wasn't exactly a tough deficit to overcome, but it was a deficit nonetheless after the struggle at Bristol, then rebounded at Darlington to put himself in this round of 8. And here, just 33 laps away from a Homestead Miami appearance to fight for the title. As Zachary Hall continues to fall back in the background, it's now 0.8 of a second. Lawson Peel is 2.8 seconds back of Zachary Hall, this time in the fight for P2. So as long as this race stays green and if there are no mistakes from Banks, this could be a ride off into the sunset.
All he's hoping for is no yellow flags. He is in a very good position to win this race with the troubles Peel had, but also the fact that he has been faster than Lawson in tonight's race, and he has shown it, and now he's gotten past his main competitor of Zachary Hall on that differing strategy. As long as Banks can keep the tires under him, he is hoping that for the final 30 or so laps, no caution flags wave, and it could be a ticket to the championship. Stephen Harlow has found himself up into 4th in this long run. He's done a great job of moving through and not making the mistakes that we've seen others make, like Steven Stempian and Cedric Hunter. There you see the 11 car, 8.5, nearly 9 seconds behind the race leader. And Eric Schaefer in all of this has stepped up into the top 5. He is the highest running non-playoff driver in this race as we stand. So it could be a pretty big opportunity for the 3 to try and get that $25. But I won't say it'll be handed to him, because Justin Henry, the next car behind him, yes, is about 2.9 seconds back, but he has 6 lap fresher tires than Schaefer does, and he has been a little bit quicker than that 3 car for most of the night. This could be a one to watch in the final 30.
They cross the start-finish line. Schaefer just about a 10th faster than Hendry, but the opportunity for Hendry is still very much alive inside the final 30 laps here from virtual Kansas City, Kansas. And on the left side of your screen, that fight for the lead, separated by still 0.8 of a second. That was really the difference throughout most of the long green flag run between the winner in Peel last week and the second place finisher of Cedric Hunter. And even then, when Zachary Hall was in contention to catch up and make it a fight for the top spot at the end, it was still 7 to 0.8 of a second that really mattered the most, and he could not get closer than that. And on the older set of Goodyear Eagles, as Banks lays off the gas pedal a little bit just to save more of his tires, Zachary Hall still is in potentiality to get up front, but it will be a very big ask. And there's Cedric Hunter on the right side of your screen with that penalty, drops all the way back to 10th place. So with all the attrition, will not lose out of a top 10 spot, but worst case scenario for him, which is current at the moment, he is still a lap down, needing a yellow flag to get back on a level playing field.
It's a top 10, but when you consider the fact that you have playoff drivers 1, 2, 3, 4, and even down in 12th with Stempian, he's still not within the 4 highest running playoff drivers, which, with how tight the points are and knowing that Lawson's one of them, you have to be top 4 of the playoff drivers in any given race to really feel good about it. Hunter had good points, but with Banks possibly winning this race and shifting that cut line down a spot, and Peel having the huge points advantage that he already had going into this race, plus the good stage points performance and a possible top 3 finish, that it could mean that Banks and Peel will definitely hold the top 2 spots. That leaves 2 more spots open for any of the other drivers, which would likely be held by Stephen Harlow and his respectable performance, but also probably Zachary Hall, considering the fact that he's still running second.
And with this shorter field at 17 cars from this week, last week, you think throughout the playoffs, a lot of the fields have lingered around the 15 to 20 car range. The less cars you have in the field, and the more you have the playoff drivers still running every single week, the more parity you have between those 2 drivers, and it's really hard to separate yourself by a lot of points. More often than not, the wins are going to be most important in this playoff format that rewards checkered flags over basically anything else. And a great point that you said there, Francisco. As good of a race as guys like Cedric Hunter have had, it turned sour. It still will be close, because guys like Hall is still in the top 10. Stephen Harlow's in the top 10. Peel, of course, the race leader, and Brandon Banks. All these guys are still within theoretical close range in the running order. And so it will be much more manageable coming to Talladega for Cedric Hunter. However, it is not a preferred destination for car number 45. At lap 176, it's Brandon Banks still in control. He's maintained 0.7 of a second between himself and Zachary Hall. Lawson Peel is still a mere 4.3 seconds behind the race leader in third. Stephen Harlow has maintained 4th. And Eric Schaefer, with Justin Hendry in tow by 2.5 seconds, is still managing a top 5 run at the end of this deal. One caution again could change the entire picture of it, but it seems like the storyline and the narrative right now, Brandon Banks in control, Hall trying to gain as much time as possible, but the 5 car, we've seen him even on the long runs, when the traffic starts getting up to him, that's when he pulls off and pulls away.
And he's continuing to put decent lap times, but Hall trying his very, very best to stay there. And I'm wondering how much of this is Banks saving tires, Hall using up his tires, because those 2 can definitely play a huge role as far as how we can look at this this gap and how it's yo-yoing at the moment. But you would expect that that Banks, with that tire advantage and with the clean air, that it's just going to be incredibly difficult for the likes of Zachary Hall to close this gap back up. And at 3/4 of a second, how it's been since Banks got the race lead, with now 21 laps to go at the start-finish line, it's just going to be very difficult, barring any caution flags.
A race that is Brandon Banks' to lose right now with 20 laps to go. Here's a look on board with Stephen Harlow, our Charlie Byer Photography onboard camera with the Project Hopener Chevrolet. And a great race for Stephen so far. Will capture another top 10. Well, it's been a very consistent playoff effort. And again, because everyone is so close on points, a lot of these playoff drivers did pick up stage points in the midway portion of this race and at lap 50 when stage 1 concluded. So it still will be at fine margins heading into the virtual Talladega Superspeedway. And for Hall, there he is trying to fight the wheel, using that other hand to relax down the straightaway. And like you mentioned, Francisco, with this update, the separation is huge. That means with all that time separating the car in front and the car behind, Harlow can kind of dig into his groove. Obviously still in that chase to get as many points and as many positions as possible in the late stages of the race, but you got to be realistic at some point. And for Harlow right now, as long as he stays where he's at and Pio doesn't make any mistakes, a 4th place is what it's going to be for car number 11.
He's in no man's land right now, and never really fun to be in this spot, but if it's for P4, you'll take it.
And for Steven, still on this back straightaway, and just using all of that time to be right in his rhythm and gain as much time as possible. But still in P4 will be a great effort nonetheless for Harlow in this race, who has been many times below the cut line and each time has been able to scrap through and find a way forward. And at Talladega Superspeedway, the last time we were there, Harlow ended up 22nd place after all that was said and done. Of course, big time crashes, big time moves, and then Craig Parks going out and stunning the field by winning the race with his teammate Eric Schaefer in tow. Harlow's going to hope that next week at Talladega is going to be treating him much better than the last time we were there. And up at the front, it remains the same gap. And it's just a race off till the end, coming to 16 laps to go. Banks has been basically the de facto dominator. He's taken the reins from Lawson Peel tonight, and he's used all of that fire to potentially get him into the Championship 4. Still a ways away, though.
Coming to 16 laps to go here is Brandon Banks, and Hall is just kept close enough that if anything were to happen, he's there to take advantage of it. All the while, both of them are kind of pulling away from Lawson Peel, but just Brandon Banks has been really impressive today, Kenneth. Just out of nowhere, he started in the back with his teammate, but he drove up his way through the field, went on the alternative strategy in stage 1 that allowed him to go up there, make the passes, and win that stage. But as soon as he got the track position, he didn't just fall through. He kept the lead, and he has not really been passed for the top spot on the racetrack. He only lost the lead on the green flag pit stop cycle, but he ran down to 23, got back by him, and here he sits leading this race. 138 laps led, over half the race. A extremely dominant effort by Brandon Banks here this evening.
And before this, Banks has not led more than 100 laps over the course of the season. If you count up all of the laps he's led up until tonight's race, it would be 99 total. So in this race alone, Banks has been able to surpass that overall stat and be able to put himself in the conversation for a championship at Homestead in Miami. But he needs 14 good laps, all clean and green, to be able to call himself a winner for the 2nd time this year, and a win that would come at the very perfect time, with Zachary Hall still waiting in the background and a car that remains as fast as ever. No real distance separating these two that is insurmountable, because Hall can very much still make this a proper fight. Lawson Peel has kept himself in 3rd, kind of camping where he's at. Of course, all this distance has allowed this 9 car to be in this rhythm, and it will be a podium effort. Of course, with all of those playoff bonus points that he had going into this round via the 4 straight victories over the course of the postseason, I'm sure that the points will take him into a solid buffer heading into Talladega next Sunday. And then for the 5th place driver, the teammate in Eric Schaefer, kind of backlogging this top 5. He will get the $25 for now, and he's actually creeping up on Cedric Hunter. This will not be for track position, though. Hunter is still 1 lap down, back in P10.
Closest battle on the racetrack right now is the battle for 6th between Justin Hendry and Craig Parks. Parks is about 8 tenths or so behind Hendry in the 85. And that could be a possible battle here in the closing stages, but Parks has older tires. Schaefer in the process has not really given up any time to Hendry, so he's looking like he could walk away with some extra cash here at the end of the night. Good stuff going on here inside this top 10 and the closing stage. It's just a lot of field spread, and so many drivers are far and far apart at this stage in the race from just how long of a run we've had. I don't think that, you know, oval race we've seen the final stage go green flag yet this season, so this could be the first.
And give kudos to these two right here, and Hendry and Parks, two drivers that have had sort of rocky seasons, and top 10s, top 5s have been very hard to come by. We mentioned those 3 prior top 10s for Hendry, both of them coming at Daytona, and then the only other top 10 not on an oval at Watkins Glen for Craig Parks. Got 2 straight top 10s, not only at Watkins Glen, but in our last mile-and-a-half affair. That was in the Lone Star State at Texas Motor Speedway. And so for Parks, who unfortunately was eliminated, didn't have enough points, nor enough momentum to carry on to the round of 8 in the fight for the championship. But for Parks, went as far as he did off of that 1 win at Talladega, and plenty of great results that were hiding in the background from all of those highlight moments that we were covering throughout the season. It's moments like these when you see the determination and the consistency and the breakthrough moments for drivers like Parks or for Justin Hendry that really make sim racing and racing in general very beautiful. And they'll, so far, still be in a place for a top 10. And like you mentioned, Francisco, that seems to be the closest battle on the racetrack. If it's not, sort of the fight for the lead. Everything else across the speedway is either a second or more in the gap. So we really have seen this field thin out considerably. The attrition has helped the cause, and it's helped Brandon Banks keep up at the front, still by the same gap we've noted ever since the drop of the green flag restart and through this strategy call. 7 laps to go, next time by from Kansas.
And there's still a lap car in front of Banks. I'm not sure they'll catch up to them before the end of the race, but it is the 28 of Casey Knighton that's in front of Banks. And we still have only 8. That would mean 8 cars on the lead lap if they do get around Casey Knighton. So just not many cars on the lead lap right now. There's the 28. He sits about 3 seconds or so in front of the race leader. So they could catch up to him before the end of the race, but it'll be really close as Zachary Hall is trying to do everything he can to close up to Banks, try to send it into turn 3, but he's lost nearly 2 tenths in that corner. So he's trying to give it everything he's got, but it is no real use right now.
Here's the onboard look from Hall as he runs second. And not only will it add on to the amount of runner-up finishes he's had this season, it'll add on to the list of runner-up finishes he's had to a Drinkin' Bros Racing driver. If he's able to stay where he's at and doesn't make any ground, he's running the very bottom in 3 and 4. And just like many of a race, we've seen Hall finish second in as he'll hit the outside wall hard off of turn 4. It's all in that search to differentiate lanes, find grip, and there he couldn't find enough of it on the right front tire, and there's heavy front end damage. Now the lead will balloon to nearly a second between the 2 cars.
Any shot he thought he had definitely went out the window with that impact to the outside wall. He was trying to see if he can find any bit of time, and he had gained about a tenth on the lap previous of that wall hit, but ultimately that's gonna kill his time, kill his lap time, maybe get him some kind of damage on the front end. You see the right front crinkled up, and was lucky enough not to get any wheel damage there. It was a hard enough hit. He might have some wheel damage, maybe some minor one, but he's now over 1.2 seconds off the lead, and that gap is growing. So Banks could just put it on cruise here and run these final 3.5 laps in hopes of getting that automatic spot into the finale.
We've noted that right front damage on a next-gen car is not to be played around with, and it could very well ill your handling very quickly. For Hall, he's now more than a second back. Lawson Peel may have a shot to creep up, but there are only 3 laps remaining. And Brandon Banks has sailed off into the Midland sunset and he's been able to prove why he is still worthy of conversation in the fight for the championship. He's been back against the wall for most of this postseason, down to the round of 12 where he nearly got by, and Bristol could have been the dagger to send him out and send him home. But now he is only 3 miles away from his second victory, and the most important yet.
And if he does win this race, Kenneth, that would mean that he's only the third driver in the entirety of the season to capture multiple wins, and the only other driver to do so while competing for the championship. The only other one, of course, being Steven Maggia, but he is not championship eligible, wasn't able to qualify for the playoffs. Only Lawson Peel is the only other driver to have multiple wins on the season, of course having 9 wins. But Brandon Banks off of turn 4, taking the white flag, looking to be the second driver that's championship eligible to get multiple wins on the season, and it would probably be one of his biggest yet.
This is the most dominant race we've seen from the Myrtle Beach, South Carolina native to date. Over 140 laps led. And here from Kansas Speedway, as we try to decide the 4 that will advance to the finale at Homestead, Miami, you can bank on Brandon. For the second time in his DTH Cup Series career, Brandon Banks is a winner, and he's on to the championship 4. What a performance for Brandon Banks. Outright domination. As Zachary Hall files in another runner-up finish, Lawson Peel will end up 3rd. And the man who survived the overtime restart at Chicagoland months and months ago will see victory lane for the second time this season and for the first time in these playoffs. Dropping the Hammah victory lane, we'll see Brandon Banks, and this win the most important, and he'll advance into the championship 4 at Homestead, Miami.
Been a while since we've seen Brandon Banks in any kind of championship battle. You have to think back, I would say back to season 5 of the 4-Wide Racing Championship, when he was in that final 5 at the Homestead Miami Speedway. Kenneth, maybe he was in that final Sunoco Championship effort, but as far as I can remember, that was the last time we saw him in a championship fight, and he was awfully competitive in the long run of that race too. So Brandon Banks, 2 wins on the season, has been good on these Mount of Hats, has been really strong with these new updates. He could be one to watch in that finale race.
He will be there for certain at Homestead, and he is the first driver to punch that golden ticket. We were wondering who it would be, whether it be one of those Category 5 esports guys, whether Lawson would go at it for 5 wins in a row, or whether somebody would spoil the party. But for the second time this season, Brandon Banks will call himself a Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series victor, this time from Kansas Speedway. Well, let's get a look at the full unofficial results after the 200 laps here from Kansas, and what a long green flag run it was till the end of the race. And it is Brandon Banks capturing career win number 2 and his first in the playoffs. He'll go straight to Homestead, doesn't have to worry about the 2 super speedway affairs in the next coming weeks. Zachary Hall again comes up 1 spot short, but with the race he's had tonight, again, boatload of points that could help him come Talladega. Lawson Peel didn't really see outright dominance from the 9 car this evening, but a top 3 effort is a top 3 effort. Worthy of note, Stephen Harlow, after tonight's race, bouncing through the top 10, recovers to 4th place. And Eric Schaefer, via the top 5 finish, 15.9 seconds back of the race winner. He will be the highest running non-playoff driver. He'll have $25 in his pocket. Justin Hendry back in P6 with Craig Parks in 7th, and Chris Progar and Casey Neiden to wrap up the top 9. Give them kudos for the race they ended up with tonight, and Casey Neiden ends up with that near final spot in the top 10. Cedric Hunter sped on pit road late in the middle of stage 3, killed his chances at winning, but still recovers for top 10 a lap down.
11th will go to Daniel Holdcroft in the number 31, with Steven Stempian after that slide entering pit road and having the unsafe entry and that pit road penalty, he eventually towed it. He finishes 12th, 17 laps down. Alex Buscarella, after having trouble for most of the evening, will finish in 13th. Brad Fulham will finish in the 14th spot. Sean Kalis will finish 15th after a good qualifying effort. Ross Harlow immediately out of the race after the first accident in stage 1. And Timothy Stubblefield will be our last driver here from Kansas in 17th.
So that'll do it for our field on the unofficial results side of things, and we will join Brandon Banks in Droppin the Hammah victory lane for just the second time this season, but this win means the most, Brandon. You are advancing to Homestead Miami Speedway. You will be running for a Droppin the Hammah Cup Series championship. How special is that?
Oh, that's awesome, man. I tell you, to be able to come in here in Kansas and actually run that good, man, racing against Lawson. I mean, Lawson, this is his track, man. So to beat him here like that, that's unbelievable. To be able to go into the rest of these races and know that I can go straight to the end, that's really awesome. So, man, I really didn't think we were going to be that good tonight. Really, the car just felt really good. About 50 laps in, and just hammered down and just got up front, and that's all I wrote.
Before this race, you had led only 99 laps total. That includes your win at Chicagoland and many other races. Then you lead 153 tonight. That is maybe over 70% of the race here this evening. What magic did you have behind the wheel of this 5 car? Because it felt like you were on rails all race long.
Yeah, I mean, clean air was a lot. I mean, honestly, really just trying to keep the track position up there. You could get those guys within 4 or 5 tenths of you and just kind of drive into their line, and you could just see it just takes all the air off the nose, and they just can't turn. So really keeping that track position was probably the most important thing. But this thing was really getting it through 3 and 4, man. I don't really think anybody had anything for me going through there. So, yeah, pretty much just managing it in 1 and 2, just trying not to run the right front off of it and just kind of keep it low on exit, and just, man, I think we power through 3 and 4, and we just go.
So now it's a change of trajectory, because after Bristol things looked a little bleak. You rebounded at Darlington, and you came into this round of 8 with still some sort of statement to prove, and you really stomp on your statement tonight. It was an outstanding performance. Now you get to focus on that final race at Homestead in Miami. You've got a couple more weeks to digest and practice for that race, but what's the mindset now coming into the final race at Homestead, and how much will that change based on what you were encountering before we took the green flag tonight?
I don't know. We're going to have to get in there and do a lot of practice, and we all know that's kind of Lawson's stomping ground. He's pretty much dominated us almost everywhere this year. So we're going to go in there and put some laps in and see if we can figure something out like we had tonight. Like I said, this car, since the update, it just drives a little different. So I think everybody's just trying to figure it out, and we're just kind of capitalizing it on it at the moment here. So hopefully we can keep that advantage running through the rest of the playoffs. We can go into these next 2 races and actually have some fun, not really feeling any pressure, and just kind of get ready for the last race.
Well, Brandon, you are pushing through to the final round, and you do it in dominating fashion tonight from Kansas. A big statement win. Before we let you go, and before we let you continue your celebrations after the dub, anybody that you want to thank or shout out for tonight's win?
Oh, well, definitely you guys for putting on the broadcast. This thing's excellent. Every single night we go back and watch these things. You guys do an excellent job. Dropping the hammer for sponsoring the league and everything that Stimpian does, and all those guys, James and Progar has done all season. It's really awesome. Appreciate those guys. And the DBR guys. Just, us getting in here every night, just, not killing each other, and then trying to learn from each other, and just putting in a lot of time in this thing. So appreciate everybody on the team, and yeah, man, it's gonna be exciting actually go into the last race, and we're the underdog, man. We ain't got nothing to lose. We're gonna go in there and race some hell. That's
a mindset that could very well go on and win a championship. That underdog mindset is big. Brandon, congratulations on the win here from Kansas Speedway. One that will be very important in this final round after what we're going to have 2 super speedway races in the next several weeks. Congrats on the dub. Congrats on advancing to the championship 4. We'll see you at Talladega next Sunday.
All right, man. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Brandon Banks steps away to get his 2nd career dub. The most important, he'll enter the championship 4 in 3 weeks' time. Let's join the 2nd place finishing driver, rather the 3rd place finishing driver, as Zachary Hall gets 2nd, but will not be able to join us, unfortunately. Francisco, you've got Lawson Peel, who ends up 3rd.
Well, Lawson, it was a great night for not just yourself, but Drinking Bros Racing overall, with Banks dominating the race. This is the first time we got to see Kansas with these new updates. Kind of take us through what it was like getting used to the track and the conditions presented to yourself, and then what you tried to do to try and make the most out of the race car.
Yeah, certainly not the Kansas I'm familiar with. It's different. Less brake involved, and used to it would just get so tight and just barely turn, and so I would use a lot of brake to turn the car, and that's just not the way it's developing throughout the run anymore. So the rears are more involved. I still was getting tight, but just how you drive, throughout the run and the rhythm and everything is different. So a little bit of a learning curve for me. You know, with Brandon, apparently it just was one of those deals that it clicked and it just was a match for him. Um, so yeah, just strange things going on the past few weeks because I won at Darlington, which is shocking, and then just was I know it's ran pretty well tonight and had a good finish, but just felt out to lunch a little bit. It's sometimes just trying to figure it out. So yeah, Brandon made a great call in stage one there to come use a set and um, drive up there, win the stage on his tires, and then he really just kept that track position throughout the entire second stage and just never lost the lead. So just put himself in a great position and held on to it for really the rest of the race after that. So that was a good call, and yeah, proud of him and happy to see him win the race there. Yeah, he showed up tonight. He shows up some nights and doesn't other nights. That's what I was telling him. It's like I know it's in there. He only brings it out in its full potential some of the time. So um, I kind of got to goad it out of him a little bit. But anyway, great race, and yeah, just lots of green flag laps, and got a pit cycle in there, and so all that was fun.
And what was it like there, Lawson, as well, when you were in the battle with some of these guys, the dirty air, the air packing as well? What was that like? We saw a little bit of it at Texas and a couple other racetracks, but here at Kansas, what was that like? We saw the big crash at the front of the field, but what was it like for yourself?
Yeah, it's pretty horrendous. Honestly, it's just really bad behind somebody, and was figuring out the air packing and everything kind of in practice, and certainly feeling what was going on there, and you really had to be careful with somebody behind you. I would just kind of get out of the way, honestly, whenever I saw it about to happen to me, because yeah, over late exit in turn two, it would snap and it would get really loose. The initial turn into turn three for some reason. So just kind of odd. I was trying to figure it out, but yeah, just lucky to miss that wreck with the leaders there in the first stage. And then obviously saw, a couple of those guys got speeding penalties throughout the pit cycle and things like that. So honestly, just staying out of that trouble and, not getting a penalty, it just put you in a great position. So, yeah, just uh, hate to see those things happen, but just got to capitalize on those mistakes and those incidents.
Now, before we let you go, Lawson, anybody you want to give a shout out to that helps makes this happen for you and everybody on your team?
Yeah, just been a great year. Appreciate Steven and Alex and Kunkel, Progar, all the admins um, throwing this together for us. Thanks to you guys in the booth. Thanks to my teammates at DBR and everybody that just watches and supports the league. And thanks to Paul's Setup Shop as well.
And we'll appreciate the time you take with us, Lawson. Congratulations on your top 3 effort tonight, and we hope to see you out at the Talladega Super Speedway next week.
Yep, we'll see you there.
Lawson Peel coming away with third here from the virtual Kansas Speedway. Let's talk with the driver who ends up in fourth place, and that is the driver of the number 11 Chevrolet. That is Stephen Harlow, who will join us now. And Stephen, this race, was hard fought. A lot of green flag racing, separation all across the board. Green flag strategy mattered a lot. What helped you put yourself in this right position to come away with the top 5 tonight?
Just being consistent, really. A lot of it was coming down to who was going to get a good stop on that last pit stop, and how you timed it up so that you came out with tires in an advantage. I tried to come a few laps late just to have a little something extra, and I gained probably a second and a half on Lawson, but we were just too spread out to do anything. Plus, with the pack the way it was, once you singled out, there wasn't a whole lot of passing to be done.
You know, half of the game in racing is mental and mentality, especially when you take the green flag and you start to figure out what it's going to be like midway through to put yourself in the right place at the end. And looking at this level of lack of diversity, I guess, in the 3 races leading up to the championship finale you have tonight, and then 2 straight super speedway races at Talladega and at Echo Park Speedway in Atlanta. So prior to the green flag, and I guess maybe the reflections after this race tonight, what that mindset was and how sacred, how important this race was going to be, putting yourself in as good of a spot as possible to those 2 races where really anything is in the cards.
Yeah, I mean, no one wants to go into 2 basically toss-up races, you know, hoping for a win or hoping for good enough points to move on. Just getting through Kansas and putting in a good showing, you know, I love Kansas. It's one of my favorite tracks, but I didn't think I had what it took to win tonight. Those 3 guys in front, they just had an extra 10th on me every single lap. But just being able to take care of it, bring it back in a good position, and not really have a buffer, but feel better about Daytona and then Atlanta after this. I think I'm happy where I'm at right now.
Well, it's all down to these final 2 races of Talladega and Echo Park Speedway. So 2 super speedway races to close this off. Hopefully it'll treat you well. Hopefully you're in that championship 4 come Homestead of Miami. But final question before we let you bounce. Anybody that you want to shout out or thank for tonight's 4th place finish?
Well, thank you guys for still putting on these broadcasts. They're super cool. You, Kenneth, and Francisco are just awesome broadcasters to listen to, and I always watch, you know, probably 2 or 3 times throughout the week after the race. Thank all the family watching at home, my girlfriend who in the other room who's waiting for me to come to bed. TOW and DTH, want to thank Project Hopner, Team Watson Racing Setups, and Warrior Soar as well.
Well, Steven, the kind words are very much appreciated, and it's always great to cover drivers like you and everybody else in a series like this. Congratulations on the top 5 finish here at Kansas. Know this one was very well deserved, and best of luck as you in the field head into Talladega Super Speedway next week. I think you and I are just probably as bewildered that we'll have 2 straight Super Speedway affairs, but we'll see you then.
Awesome. Should be fun.
Stephen Harlow closes out our interviews tonight with a top 5 finish, a 4th place effort. And the last time we saw Stephen Harlow at a super speedway was back at the regular season finale at Daytona. He ended up 18th after rolling off inside the top 5. So with that, we end up with a 2-race playoff stretch of super speedway affairs. Talladega and Atlanta will be the next 2 events that we'll see to close out this round of 8 and decide the 4 that will make it to Homestead of Miami Speedway, or rather the 3 that will join Brandon Banks after winning here tonight. And now everything's up in the air. Francisco, 1.5-mile super speedway that was repaved several years ago, and a 2.66-mile beast that never seems to let up in intensity. It's going to be a crazy next 2 events.
Completely unpredictable the next 2 weeks are going to be. We just have no clue. There's really nothing we can predict. There's trends, but there's no driver, nothing that we can look back on and say, yeah, this is something we could point to and give us a good indication. We just show up to the racetrack and we'll call it as we see it, and whoever's there alive at the checkered flag are going to be the ones to look at.
So with Brandon Banks getting the win tonight from Kansas, that means 3 spots are still available between 7 other drivers. Again, Kansas was noted all playoffs long as that race in this round where you can control your destiny and control the destiny Brandon Banks did. His 2nd career Droppin the Hammah Cup Series victory comes at the perfect time. He will advance to Homestead Miami Speedway in 3 weeks when we end the year. But on behalf of everyone at the Droppin the Hammah Cup Series that makes this campaign possible, for Steven Stempy and Chris Progar, and the entire admin team that runs this ship. A big thank you to them. And on behalf of all of us at the KBueno Racing Network, for Charlie Byer, Eli Comerford, Keelan Belsha, and my great colleague in the booth, as always, Francisco Bacallao, I am Kenneth Bueno, waving so long from the heartland, and congratulations to Brandon Banks on his advancement into the Championship 4.